Hello everyone, today a very interesting video awaits you. I would like to ask you to support this video by liking and subscribing to the channel. Enjoy watching everyone. The battlefield is covered with the bodies of defeated knights in white armor. Knights lie next to each other. Their armor is covered in blood. Lightning and thunder are striking from the sky. In the light of lightning, you can see the battle, where the fighting frenzy consumed both sides, and the bodies of the dead soldiers. Judging by the scale, it was a bloody and epic battle, full of heroism and greatness. Stepping over the bodies of the fallen, a young man dressed in brown armor heads straight through the chaos of the battle. His face is crossed by a deep scar, which slightly distorts the beauty of the young man, and his eyes are full of anger and determination. With one hand he holds his right side, and with the other he drags behind him a huge war hammer of an unusual shape. He thinks of this battle as a great tragedy. A humanoid monster appears before him, whose powerful torso is covered with fur, and whose head is crowned with horns. His animal mouth is full of sharp teeth. This is the king of demonic beasts Kravugati. A young warrior of the symbol with a fierce gaze, full of readiness and determination for battle, looks at the demonic opponent. The boy is ready to engage in battle with the monster, regardless of the outcome of the battle. He floats high into the air, clutching the hammer tightly in his hands. The weapon glows red. This should be followed by a powerful blow. A snarl of anger escapes the boy's lips. The monster defends itself with a paw, but the hero reaches for the monster with his weapon. The fighting spirit of the opponents permeates the air. The warrior partially understands the absurdity of such an attack. The lord of the demon beasts looks down on the young man, the beast's face smiles, and the demon tells the boy to surrender, because all his efforts are in vain. The warrior looks at the enemy with hatred in his eyes, and with a challenge and iron in his voice, tells him to shut up, because he is making too much noise. With a very loud sound, similar to the sound of a meteorite, the hammer breaks the monster's hand. The young man finds himself at the monster's feet. He leans on his weapon. The boy's gaze is self-absorbed. The warrior sits in a deep crater created by his landing. Beside him lies the severed paw of a demon lord. The guy says that it has become very quiet. He leans on his hammer, the handle of which he tightly grips. In the body of the young warrior there is a terrible through wound on the stomach. With a bloody hand that burns with magical energy, he tries to cover the wound. But the boy's efforts are in vain, because the wound is very big. The expression on his face is full of pain and the realization that he doesn't have enough energy to heal. He reflects on the moment when his life went the wrong way. A young boy, dressed in brown leather armor, examines his hands with curiosity and surprise. Against the background of the fortress wall, two boys are running along the path. One of them is dressed in armor and holds a staff. These guys belong to the most famous knightly families and aristocracy. The main character looks up, and his gaze is filled with a sense of his own strength, significance, and dignity, because he himself achieved his knighthood through trial and error. A warrior stands on a rock. The city spread out at the foot of the rock. It burns. The boy reflects on the fact that if he had worked harder and put in more effort, he would have been able to protect the continent. The main character's hand stops glowing with a mysterious blue light. He ran out of mana. The combat shawl leaves the boy. The young man realizes that the demon lord he defeated possessed extraordinary power. But he is only the captain of the 7th Army Corps. The boy begins to understand the scale of the problem. Black silhouettes of demonic entities with red eyes appear from the darkness. These are the leaders and ringleaders of the demonic army that invaded the continent. A warrior sits in a crater. He tightly grips the handle of the hammer in his hands. The hammer itself is covered in the blood of the enemy. The boy has a wound on his stomach. His eyes show the understanding that the situation is hopeless. He hears someone calling him, turns his head, and looks at him with a tired but surprised look. A gray-haired man in expensive armor calls to him. A man in gold-colored armor looks at the young man. The man's hair and beard are completely gray. This is the Sword Emperor Esgard, von Valentii. He asks if the warrior is still alive. The man's eyes are covered. Hair and beard are dusted with dust. Blood trickles from the mouth. He informs the young warrior that in death. But before leaving the world, I wanted to ask the boy a question. The emperor lies impaled by a claw on the severed paw of the fallen demon lord. He asks the young warrior why he did not run away from the battlefield, because he was born in poverty and suffered for a long time. The boy, whose clothes are soaked in blood, replies that he has always been interested in hearing what old people talk about before they die. He leans on the handle of his hammer with one hand. The young man is covered in blood. He shouts that he does not like to be weak and appear weak, and that a real man holds his head high and does not think of desertion. The emperor laughs loudly at the warrior's idea of desertion. His face shows an ironic attitude towards the young man's words. The young man looks at the old man with resentment in his eyes and says that the old man still has the strength to laugh in the face of death. The emperor asks that the boy find him when he returns. He tells the man that he does not understand what he means. The old man continues to say that he will not believe the warrior when he just appears to him. And that's why the guy has to remember one secret. The emperor gives the young man a ring, and calls the boy the name of his first daughter, Lilia. The parents gave their daughter this name in honor of their favorite flower. And this is a secret that only two people know about. The boy's hands begin to glow with a magical blue light. He looks at them with surprise and incomprehension. At this time, the emperor turns to the boy and asks to find him as soon as possible. The guy doesn't understand. There is a bed in a room with a stone floor. A small boy is lying on it. A girl is sitting on a chair near the bed. She bent over the boy's lap. The boy is beaten. The boy looks at the girl leaning over him. He notes that the dead also see dreams, because the girl is his sister, whose death he saw. These are the memories of a young warrior. A girl is sitting on a cobblestone. She covers the boy with her body from the blows of two men. One of the men approaches and asks the girl about the ring, which she hid somewhere and does not admit. The men enter the room where the boy and girl are. One of them kicks the chair on which the girl is sitting. She falls to the floor with a thud and is unusual for a person. A sprawled body lies on the floor next to the bed. The men note that the girl is dead. Perhaps even from a kick inflicted by one of the uninvited guests. They take the girl's body in their arms and drag it along the floor to the door. The boy remarks that they must sneeze that she is dead. They still want to take his sister's body. The men talk and decide what to do with the girl's body next. One of them sits down near the body and says that there will be some perverts, necrophiles. Or the body can be donated. The boy is lying on the bed. Gritting his teeth, he concentrates his efforts on his injured arm and tries to prevent the men from taking his dead sister's body. His hand begins to glow with a blue light. All damage and wounds disappear from it. Mana heals the boy's body. The boy looks in surprise at the hand, which begins to glow more and more with a magical light. It is hard for him to believe what is happening now. The intention of revenge is increasingly asserted in the boy. He attacks one of the men, strikes him with his hand and knocks him to the floor with a thud. The men are standing over the boy, who is crouching on the floor and protecting his sister's body. They look in surprise and talk among themselves that the boy has lost his mind. The boy remains lying on the floor, alone with his sister's body, beaten and abandoned by the killers. Raising his hands to his face, the boy looks at them in surprise. The hands glow with a mysterious bright blue light. He sits over his sister's body and still thinks it's all just a dream. The boy looks at his hands and realizes that he was able to use the manna to protect the deceased. The face of an old man with gray hair and a beard. He reminds that you need to find him as soon as possible. The main character still looks at his hands in fascination, and realizes that everything is happening in reality and he has returned to the past. The boy is crying. He looks at his hands, which are burning with blue light. From the boy's mouth comes a cry to the old man, the emperor. He asks the emperor why he sent him so late. The boy stands over his sister's body. He gathered his strength and realized that, despite everything, this was a chance to say goodbye to his sister, because in the past life it was not possible. The boy gathered his strength, clenched his hands into fists, clenched his teeth. The idea of taking revenge on his sister's killer was born in his head. The body of a beautiful but too young girl lies in a coffin filled with lilac flowers. A boy with a sad look. The facial expression expresses thoughtfulness. The boy thinks about the fact that the girl was not his relative. The only thing they had in common was dark hair color, which is rare on the continent. A boy and a girl are sitting opposite each other. The girl took the boy's cheeks with her hands, which was clearly not to his liking. The boy thinks that he reminded her of the brother she lost. It was the girl who gave him the name Tani. A coffin with a girl is standing on the grass. A priest reading from a book, the main character, a group of boys and a bunch of girls gathered near her. Everyone's heads are bowed as a sign of grief. The boy stands thoughtful and upset. A red-haired girl looks at him with interest from the group of girls. Curiosity and pity in her eyes. The red-haired girl with big sad eyes is Aaron's friend, Emma. She looks at Tani worriedly. The red-haired girl looks at the dead body of Irini and the little boy who was leaning over her. It seems that she is thinking about something or remembering something. Memories do not cause joy. The red-haired girl raised a finger to her mouth thoughtfully and looks at Tani, thinking about the fact that the boy gave Irini a funeral ceremony. The priest reads a sermon over the body of the deceased. Tani stands with her hands clenched into fists and thinks that there is nothing to blame herself for and look down. A boy surrounded by blue light is standing on the road in some city. The buildings of the city are old and built of wood. In front of him is a winding road that leads to a large house on a mountain. The boy climbs the road. It's night in the yard. He is met by two men who blocked the road. They consider the boy a vagabond. Is the boy mean and looks at men with anger? And asks them if a bandit named Vavk is there. The question causes surprise in men. One of the men quickly puts his hand over the boy and tries to hit Tani. However, the boy catches the man's hand and stops it halfway. The man screams, mouth wide open, and grabs his hand. It was swollen and red in one spot. Maybe the arm is broken. The second man lunges at Tani. His fingers are spread wide. He tries to grab the boy. The man holds the boy by the shirt on his chest and tries to lift him up. However, he does not succeed. Tani looks down and defiantly at the man trying to lift the boy. The boy knocks the man away with one kick. That stork flies to the ground, spreading his arms wide. Chest glows with a blue light. The young man himself thinks about the fact that the technique, which the boy himself developed, worked. Two projections of the main character stand side by side. One is a normal body, the other is a boy's mana body. The secret of the technique was to use two bodies to multiply its capabilities. The young man's body is enveloped in a blue glow. It emphasizes the relief and physical development of Taini. The effectiveness of the technique lies in the combination of mana, normal body, and body mana. The boy devours food with delight and a huge appetite. Emma is standing next to her, holding a bowl. In this way, she helps the boy in the development of secret techniques, because for this you need to eat well. The man runs away. In his eyes you can read fear, fright, and misunderstanding. The boy says that he understood the reason for the failure of using body mana in his past life. The reason is the mutilated body. Taini grabbed the man's leg and, swinging hard, threw him. The man's face, bulging eyes, and wide-open mouth, expressed fear and despair. Something flew at breakneck speed into the hall where people were sitting. It broke through the wall, scattered the men, forced some to defend themselves with their hands, and flew on. The men looked anxiously and curiously at what had caused all this violence. One of them noticed the uninvited guest. A silhouette appeared from a hole in the wall, in a cloud of dust. It was a silhouette of a boy. His face and most of his body could not be seen. When the dust settled, everyone noticed that a young man entered the hall. His body was enveloped in a blue glow. All the men present looked at the stranger with interest. Those present were staring at the boy. They were surprised and wondered what the stranger was thinking when he came to such a place without a weapon. Suddenly, unexpectedly for everyone, the boy grabbed one of the men's leg and spun him around. With a noise and a roar, the boy scattered the men present with the body of their friend. One of the thugs who killed Taini's sister watched in horror as the audience flew high into the air and scattered throughout the hall. There was no one around, and the boy, creating a real dust storm, stamped the bald bandit into the floor. Garmater rained around. The enemy's body lay at Taini's feet. The boy raised his head and looked at the balcony towering above the hall where the massacre took place. Two men with red hair and many clothes were standing on the balcony. One of the men standing on the balcony began to take out a sword and threatened the boy that he would cut him in half. Taini, engulfed in a blue glow of mana, raised his head and looked at the men threatening him. The boy's gaze was determined and confident. Outwardly, the boy was calm and balanced. The men look at the boy in surprise. A man with a sword half drawn from its scabbard says that the corpse of a person who possesses mana can be sold very dearly. Taini holds the leg of one of the enemies with her hand. His look is full of surprise. The hand no longer glows with the glow of mana. Taking advantage of the delay caused by the boy's surprise, and realizing that the mana had run out, the red-haired men swooped down from the balcony straight at their opponent. The boy looks at his hand as something useless. He is surprised that the mana supply has been depleted so quickly. Two men face each other. Put both in armor. The old gray-haired man looks at his younger interlocutor in surprise. He holds the man's body in his hands. The mustached gray-haired man says that the young man is crazy because he used a human body instead of a weapon. The boy should behave more noble and learn martial arts. The redheads attack Taini. The boy stands in a defensive position to counter the swift blows of the swords. The faces of the sword fighters are focused and angry. They attack rapidly and as quickly as possible. Reacting quickly and covering himself with his hands, Taini jumped to the side to avoid the blows. Opponents look in surprise at the rapidity with which the boy moves and do not understand how the little one predicted their movements. The guy hits one of the opponents hard and accurately in the face. That storm flies away. Tani kicks one opponent into the air with a powerful kick. He pushes the other away and knocks the weapon out of his hands. The guy swims up and catches up with the enemy in the air. He grabs the man by the shirt on his chest. Swinging, Tani throws the opponent to the floor. He lands with a thud on his back, legs raised high. The guy lands on the floor and quickly chops down another opponent. He does not have time to orient himself and falls, widening his eyes in surprise. A man of strong build looks surprised. On his broad shoulders is leather armor with fur. He reacted to the noise he heard. Concerned, he asks who is there. This is the leader of the bandits, Vovk. A young man in battle armor stands in front of a wolf-like monster, a werewolf with silver fur. The monster's eyes glow a fierce red. He is much taller and larger than the young man. The wolf's mouth is full of razor-sharp teeth. Saliva drips from the mouth. The fur is irritated. The eyes are burning. Such a silver wolf is a rarity even among its fellow beastmen. A silver beastman sits in a chair that looks more like a throne. He is surrounded by other wolves, beastmen, but of a different color. The beastman on the throne is powerful and powerful, combining the strength of a wolf and the intelligence of a man. The boy is standing opposite a fair-haired man, the leader of the bandits. The bandit asks why the boy did this to the Posipaks. Tani replies that now he will beat Vovk and find out everything he needs to know. The boy lets out a laugh and looks mysteriously at the leader of the bandits. Tani asks Vovk if he really wants these to be his last words. The bandit looks at the boy with anger. His gaze burns with rage. He calls the boy a worm and threatens to rip his throat. The guy is running. Opposite him stands a werewolf with blonde fur. He spread his paws wide. His body bulges with muscles. Of the clothes, he is wearing only a bandage on his hips. The young man, with his hands on his sides, stands opposite the monster. Vovk pulls its clawed paws towards him. The boy notices that the monster's fur is brown. Tani asks if the werewolf mother is a dog. Enraged by the boy's question, the beastman rushes at him. Tani stands with her hands in her pockets. The werewolf opened its mouth wide and quickly runs to the boy. The beastman swings wide and strikes with a powerful paw. The boy swims away from the blow. Tani is amazed at the speed and power of the werewolf's attack. He clearly did not expect this. The boy clenches the monster's jaws with his hands. He forgets that the werewolf is a formidable opponent, much stronger than the previous ones. Tani stands firmly in front of the monster in a fighting stance. With a cry of pain, the beastman falls on his back, unable to stand on his feet. Blood is flying from his mouth. He tries to stop her with his hands. Having ruffled its fur, opening its toothy mouth and sticking out its tongue, from which saliva and blood fly, the wolf rushes at the boy. Paws topped with sharp claws reach for the boy. The monster's eyes burn with hellish fire. The monster attacks Tani, but Tani moves very quickly and avoids being caught by the enemy. The boy's movements are incredibly fast. He swims around the werewolf, not giving it a chance. The boy counterattacks Vovk, rapidly approaches him and is ready to strike. Tani swung his leg high and hit the enemy. Throwing his hands up, the werewolf collapsed back. A scream escaped from his mouth and blood flew. A monster is lying on the floor. The boy approaches him and tells him not to rush to die, because the young man has only just begun. The boy gave a strong kick to the enemy. The werewolf flew to the wall. Tani mentioned that the monster has a very good regeneration, so you can be more rough with it. Vovk flew into the stone wall with a roar. He is all battered and tattered. The wool stands on end. The eyes are surprised. There is a large, deep crack in the wall above the mouth of the defeated werewolf. Some kind of pentagram burns in it with a blue glow. Taney looks at the place where his opponent's body lies. The body itself is not visible due to a cloud of dust. But the boy sees a blue glow in the wall and watches with interest. A beaten man lies under the wall. This is the bandit Vovk in human form. Above him stands Taney. He hid his hands in his pockets. A red precious stone lies at the boy's feet. A frightened, beaten bandit, whose body is covered with bruises and scratches, asks the boy what he is doing here and what he needs. A man is sitting on the floor. Blood flows from the corners of his mouth. He has a pitiful appearance. He tries to cover himself and protect himself from the boy with his hands. Wolf asks, startled, if Taney is going to beat him again. The guy is standing over the body of the enemy. The boy's hands are folded on his chest. Eyes are closed. The head is raised. It looks like the little one is praying. He turns to his sister and says that the victory over the enemy should help his sister's spirit to calm down. The wolf is kneeling. He apologizes, folding his hands above his head as if for prayer. The boy puts his hand over the enemy as if he is going to hit him. The astral projection of Vovka's body lies nearby. The werewolf looks at the ground with frightened eyes. His hands are folded above his head. He says that he is very sorry that Irina died. Wolf kneels in front of Taney and apologizes. The boy turned away and looks with interest at the red stone lying on the floor. He asks to explain why such a creature as Wolf lives in such a place. A boy picks up a red gem. Taney understands that he did not find such a thing in his past life. He holds in his hands a red stone that he picked up from the floor. Suddenly, surprised and afraid, the boy looks at his hands, covered in red light. The spirit of a werewolf, broke out of the stone. His face is engulfed in red demonic light. Eyes burn with hellish fire. The mouth is wide open. It shows sharp teeth like a blade. The boy holds a stone in his hands, from which demonic energy bursts out. Taney looks on in shock and amazement at all this. A guy with a strong physique and an elf girl are walking along a forest path. The young man is dressed in brown leather armor. On his shoulders he carries a large, oddly shaped war hammer. The elf carries a bow in her hands. A young man notices the spirit of a deer in a forest clearing among the centuries-old trees. The spirit glows with a blue glow. The elf walks on without turning around. She tells the boy that these mystical creatures live in this forest, and explains that they became so due to the accumulation of mana in the bodies of these animals over a long period of time. The girl is an elf with green hair combed and gathered in a golden braid. 2 earrings in the ears. The girl holds a glowing stone in her hands and asks the boy if he knows what the essence of the spirit is. Little Taney is holding in his hands a stone from which a demonic essence escaped. He guessed that it was a spiritual stone that contained the spirit of a werewolf. The wolf kneels before the boy and asks for forgiveness. Taney looks curiously at the evil spirit that broke out of the spirit stone. He is interested in why the stone had demonic energy. The spirit of a werewolf seems to be bound by chains. He looks at the boy. A boy stands in front of a silhouette of a wolf, which is made entirely of mana. In Taney's hands is the demon soul stone. He squeezes it tightly and demonic bonds fall from the wolf. A huge wolf stands in the middle of the night forest. His eyes are burning with a red light, his fur is ruffled. A group of men in brown hoods attack the animal. Hooded men with red burning eyes clutch daggers that glow red with a black glow. They have a very suspicious appearance. Attackers rapidly and purposefully attack the wolf's legs. The whistling swings of their daggers cut through the air and leave trails in their wake. The wolf growls very loudly in pain and rage. Saliva flies from his mouth. The animal's head is enveloped in red demonic light. A group of people in hoods surrounded the wolf's body. The snow-white fur of the animal is dusty and covered with blood stains. The wolf's mouth is wide open, a scream of pain erupts from it along with blood. The lifeless body of the wolf lies on the ground. 2 men in hoods are standing next to him. 2 more people sit on the wolf's body and try to cut the animal's body with demonic daggers. Men in hoods sit on the body of a wolf. One of the men wipes the dagger. Another of the killers clutches a soul stone in his hand, which burns red and black. A young red-haired boy in the same hood is standing in front of the hooded man. In his folded palms he holds a soul stone burning with demonic light. The boy's eyes are wide open in surprise. The hooded boy raised the stone to his chest. Covered in red, the boy began to turn into a beast man with red fur. His arms and legs became covered with fur and transformed into paws. Little Taney stands over the apologetic thug. The boy, with a thoughtful look on his face, asks his beaten opponent who created him. The spirit of the wolf looks at the bandit. The spirit of the wolf suddenly rushes at the bandit, who is still on his knees and begs for forgiveness. Taney stands between the bandit and the wolf and stops the latter from killing the bandit. The boy raises his hand and stops the spirit of the animal, explaining that the bastard must suffer before death. The wolf looks at the boy with understanding. Taney is surprised that the wolf understands him. The elf put her hands on her sides, looks at the warrior and asks if he is interested in becoming a spiritual mage. She explains that only those with a pure soul and a large supply of mana can do this. The wolf leans into the boy's face. He explains to Tana that when he removed the enchantment from the spirit animal, the boy's mana penetrated the spirit stone and now they understand each other. The boy, with his eyes wide open in surprise, asks if they can now make a deal with the spirit. The spirit agrees with the boy. The boy extends his wounded hand to the wolf. The boy's hand is enveloped in a blue glow. In the other, he holds a spiritual stone. An elf with a drawn bow is riding on a huge eagle. She says that spirits do not need constant attention. After all, as long as the mana supports their existence, they will support the host. The wolf spirit turns to the boy, mouth wide open and snarling. Taney guesses that the spirit wants to ask something. He reaches for the beast's open mouth. The beast and the boy looked at each other. The spirit's eyes burned blue. The wool bristled. The beast was excited. Taney guessed that the beast wanted revenge for him. The wolf bowed his head to the boy. Both understand that it remains to agree on the rules of joint existence. Taney asked the wolf what name to give it. The boy put his hand on the wolf's head. The wolf is friendly. He gave a paw to Taney. The boy decided to give a name that he liked and called the wolf Lunovovk. The boy and the wolf stood over the bandit, who was still begging for forgiveness. Taney placed a hand on the wolf's head. The wolf glares at the bandit. Together with the boy, they decide the future fate of the killer. The boy took hold of his chin. His hand is covered in blood. However, the boy is occupied with thoughts that the monster was created by the followers of the demon, apostates who renounced the worship of the goddess. The bandit looked frightened at the boy with the wolf, crouched on the floor. Taney asked where the people who gave the thief the soul stone were, and if they were followers of the demon cult. The thief stared madly at the floor. He repeated that he was just a test subject. And the members of the organization will come after Taney with his new friend, because the cultists are extremely strong. With a very loud crash, the bandit's head snapped off. Taney covered his hands. Splashes of blood and brains flew in different directions. The boy was standing over the bandit's body. There was no head on the thief's shoulders. Instead, a pool of dark red blood spilled out. The boy thought about the fact that a special spell had worked, which tore his head apart. The boy was looking at the wall with a deep crack in it with interest. In the crack, a mysterious symbol was burning with blue light, which appeared immediately after the victory over the enemy. Taney swung and used the body of the deceased to break a hole in the wall where there was a crack, in which a symbol flickered blue. Behind the wall was a room. When the dust settled, the boy noticed that there was a room behind the wall, in the opposite wall of which there was a hatch. Taney took the enemy's body by the hand. The door, reminiscent of the door of a safe, was burning with a symbol. The boy believed that the emperor needed to know the information that Taney had gained in battle. At the first opportunity, the boy was going to tell. The boy opened the door to the secret room. The wolf stood behind him and peered into the room with interest. It was full of jewels, there was a stack of books and a large chest with gold. The boy was holding a golden seal with a bird in his hands. Among all the treasures in the room, Taney's attention was drawn to a seal, because it was the ancestral seal of the Valencia family. A little boy is sitting under the wall of the house. A well-dressed woman with white hair is standing next to him on the street. A guard with red hair stands nearby. A well-dressed girl removes a ring from her finger. Her bodyguard, dressed in armor and carrying a sword, is most likely a girl. She looks at this scene doubtfully. A hand in a white glove hands a gold ring into the hands of a beggar boy. The owner tells the beggar to take the ring and look for it after a certain time, because she can help him. A girl in a blue light dress and white high-heeled shoes is happy and smiling. This is Loya, Fawn, Valencia, the youngest daughter of the Sword Emperor. A girl in a dress stands in the crowd and holds the hands of an old woman. Next to the girl is her bodyguard. The crowd looks at the girl with delight. Everyone knows about the kindness of the emperor's youngest daughter. A carriage drives along a country road. People work in the field and look at the richly decorated carrot. They wave their hands in a friendly way, greeting a young girl sitting in a carriage. It is a tradition to watch your lands. In the cathedral, there is a tall statue of a woman with her arms wide open, as if trying to hug her. A young girl is kneeling at the foot of the statue. She placed flowers at the feet of the statue. Taney holds a gold ring in her hand, which sparkles brightly in the sun, and looks at it carefully. He thinks that now he can return it to its owner and enlist her support. The boy hides the ring in his pocket with blood-smeared hands. He thinks that with the ring it will be easier for him to meet the emperor. Bodies lie in the middle of the hall between the wreckage of tables and chairs. A group of men is standing in the hall. A tall bald man in shining armor stands out among them. The men look at each other in fear. The face of the man in armor is confused. A group of men behind him smile nervously and say that the boy who grabbed the bandit's leg caused such a ruckus. A man in armor looks evilly at his interlocutors, who try to hide from him with their hands. He reminds them not to rely heavily on drugs. A man is lying on the crushed steps. Swinging his leg, encased in a patchwork boot, the bald man knocks the body down the stairs, and says that the wolf does not look after his wards. This will be an excuse to raise their fees. A bald stocky man in light armor with a sword in a scabbard stands in the middle of a hall filled with broken furniture. This man is the captain of the guard at Phil's outer fortress, Ray. A boy descends the stairs. The men point to him and say that he caused the fire. The man in the armor asks the boy in surprise if this is true. The man's face is angry. He raised his eyebrows and with undisguised rage asks the boy if he realizes what he has done. The guy is standing on the stairs. He leans his bleeding hand against the railing and tells the knight that he just dealt with the robbers who are paying the captain for cover. The knight angrily asks if the boy has any sense of fear, and in the next moment rushes at the boy. The gauntlets burn with fire. The guy calmly stands in place, ready for an enemy attack. The boy looks with interest at the burning seal in front of his face. He mentally notes that this man in armor has not even reached the second level of mana mastery. The boy carelessly and with a very quick movement of his right hand moves the opponent's hand to the side. At the same time, a very loud click is heard. The surprised knight looks at the hand, which is no longer burning. He has many questions. A sense of fear can be read on the face of everything. Taney activated the mana. His feet lit up with a blue glow. The boy rushed to attack the opponent. His gaze is determined and focused. The bald man in armor does not have time to react. His hand is far to the side. He watches in fear as the foot of Taney, who has activated his powers, approaches. The knight stops the boy's attack. With all his strength and clenched teeth, he grabs Taney's leg and stops her. Rivals feed off each other. Their faces express a whole range of emotions. The boy looks at the knight stubbornly. The captain does not yet fully understand the situation. Taney sails away from the knight. He believes that it is better to refrain from a show of force for the time being. After all, Lord Felisa has many knights under his command. The guy is standing at the top of the stairs. Above him rises the silhouette of a spirit, a wolf. The knight looks at this picture in surprise. He draws his sword from its sheath. The expression on the knight's face shows that he does not understand the situation and is a little scared that the boy has such skills. The guy looks down on his opponent. He sees that he hesitated and offers him negotiations. Opponents look at each other. A silhouette of a wolf can be seen behind Taney. A crowd of men is watching from below. The boy offers to pay Lord Phyllis, which surprises the latter. The knight smiles. His face is relaxed and slightly mocking. He tells the boy that he doubts whether the boy has the required amount of money. He is interested in how many years ago. The boy looks at the knight in confusion. He tells the captain that the price set by him is too high and his predecessors paid much less. The knight looks indignantly at the boy. His face turns into a grimace of anger and hatred. Taney, standing at the top of the steps, looks smugly at the man in armor. The wolf spirit bared its teeth and raised its fur on the knight. The boy offered the captain to meet in battle here and now. The knight indignantly hid his sword in its scabbard and walked away from the boy with his wolf spirit. He was angry that the boy had defeated him. Lord Fia's knight walks across the hall. It is conducted by two men. One of them says that the knight will just leave everything. The knight hits him and he falls headlong. The knight turned his head and at that moment caught the gold coin that the boy threw to him. He asked the captain to introduce him to the new leader of the bandits and the owner of the place. The man's face is angry and displeased. A group of men who are with the captain are trying to quietly leave the hall. Taney stands with her spirit on the balcony. He tells the men to round up the whole gang and women and beggars. The boy holds a gold ring in his blood-stained hands. He looks at her with interest and a little fascination. A wolf stands behind him. Taney thinks about meeting Lady Valentia soon. The guy is sitting on the broken steps. A crowd of men and women approaches him. They are all gang members. His girlfriend runs to the guy from the crowd. She looks at his bloody hands in horror. The guy says that it is the blood of Bandit Vovka. The crowd, with curiosity, fear and uncertainty of what is happening, looks at the headless, blood-covered corpse of the bandit. The crowd looks at the boy in fear. People are worried about what Lord Falesa will say about killing the main bandit, because the captain might think that the people have turned against him. Everyone is worried. Tainy is holding a book. He says that the captain will not do anything to them, because then Duke Valentii will learn from the book that Lord Falesa has been deceiving him. There are guards at the gate. They talk about Sir Rem being on probation after killing the bandit wolf and the events at the tavern. The city no longer generates income. Tainy stands under the wall around the corner from the guards. His face is hidden in the shadows. He hears them talking about the Lord wanting to see a new leader of the bandits. The boy looks at the record book with surprise, curiosity and a little confusion. He does not fully believe that with her help it will be possible to control Lord Felis. Grown-up Tainy hands the book to the gray-haired man. He recalls how in a past life the Duke promised him a round sum and the opportunity to take several friends out of dangerous territory for this book. Tainy is sitting on the steps of the tavern. He looks at the red-haired girl. The girl is excited. The guy reassures her that she doesn't have to know everything. People look at Tainy with wide eyes in surprise. The boy said that they had nothing more to fear from the bandit wolf because they were all free. People couldn't believe what they heard for joy. The guy is sitting on the steps. He allowed the people to vent their anger on the dead leader's body. The crowd pounces on the corpse. People's eyes are full of rage and hatred towards the offender. Tainy says that he is not good at comforting. It allows people to take money and gold from a jewelry safe. The crowd throws the body of the former leader. The guy understands that money is the best pleasure. The boy is standing near the safe. He has a book in his hands. He refuses to take money from the safe, arguing that he has already taken what he needs. People can't believe their eyes. They whisper to each other. The crowd looks into the safe. The whispers flying over the crowd indicate that people are seeing so much wealth in one place for the first time. Their eyes light up greedily and with the desire to make money. The boy is standing near the safe. A wolf spirit appears behind him. Tainy warns everyone present so that no one thinks of grabbing extra or doing something bad to get hold of the money. Tainy talks to Amoyu and advises her to go to Diane, go in groups and even better hire a mercenary in the guild for protection. She asks what Tainy will do. He answers that he still has work to do. Tainy stands in front of the guard. The guards blocked his way into the courtyard with halberds. They are surprised that it is a boy and mock him, saying that commoners are not allowed in the yard. The boy summons a wolf spirit. The guards run away. It is Smokey. The wolf looks with satisfaction at the results of his appearance. Tainy stands with her hands in her pockets. A boy stands in front of a man in a green uniform. At the man's side is a saber. Another man is standing next to them. The man in the green uniform is the master of the Kron Order. He points out that Tainy is much younger. The master of the order reaches for his saber. He is outraged by the boy's behavior. Threatens him for bad behavior. The master's hand begins to glow with a light similar to fire. Tainy stands across from the man in uniform. The face of the master of the order is angry and indignant. The boy tells him that he should not act like a noble and important person and not be an idiot. The boy looks at the master of the order with a calm and slightly superior look. He tries to pull out the saber. Taney warns that he is a guest and accuses Kron of being the worst person in the order. The master of the order almost completely drew the sword from its scabbard. A butler appears between him and the boy, warning Kron against rash decisions and actions, and that the Lord is expecting a guest. Taney, accompanied by the master, enters the richly decorated rooms of the Lord. There are flags hanging on the walls of the room. Lord is sitting on the sofa and drinking wine. He has red hair, combed back. Taney kneels before the Lord. He puts his hand to his heart in a chivalrous salute. The boy says that it is an honor for him to meet Lord Fias. Lord Felisa is a young man in a blue jacket and red shirt. He sits on the sofa and asks Taney where he learned the manners of a knight and is good at pretending to be a knight. The guy is surprised. After all, the Lord he remembers from his past life was completely different. Taney thinks that this is still the aristocrat that the boy was familiar with. Looking at the Lord with a look full of loyalty and respect, the boy said that he wanted to go to the service of the nobleman. Taney's hopes were set on the book and the impact it is making. Lord is calmly stretched out in the chair and looks at the little one with interest. The master of the order reacts indignantly to the boy's phrase that the servant and the master should be treated equally. The nobleman is sitting in a chair. Next to him stands the master of the order. Surprise on their faces. The boy answered the question of how old he was and whether he had gnomes or elves in his family. The Lord looks down on the boy. They stand against each other. The aristocrat asks to explain why the boy wants to work for the Lord, although recently he has greatly damaged the business and income. The boy stands before an aristocrat and a master of the order. He will explain to them that it was done for the good of the Lord himself. He does not understand this motivation and says that he now doubts the boy's adequacy. Kron looks at the Lord and tells him that he can deal with the boy in a moment for his inappropriate words. The guy argues his position by the fact that the Duke banned drugs and prostitution. Kron warns the Lord that the little one is changing the subject and saying completely inappropriate words that are difficult to verify. The Lord quickly turned and pointed the master of the order to his place. He humbly bowed his head and asked for forgiveness from his master. The boy was told by the aristocrat that his approach was correct. Taney bowed his head in respect. He put his hand to his chest and asked for time to clarify one more matter. The nobleman Felisa sat down in a wide chair. In his hands is a pipe for smoking. He inhales the smoke and tells the boy that he knows about the spirit that is under the boy's command. The Lord's face changes. It becomes dark from rage. Eyes burning with hellish fire. He wonders if this is the spirit that Taney extracted from the bandit's soul stone. Taney summoned a wolf spirit. They stood side by side and looked at the Lord with anxiety and fear. Both were confused. The aristocrat sitting in the chair was surrounded by a dark purple aura. He smiled mysteriously and carelessly leaned back in his chair. Taney thought it must be a dark mage. A tall figure in a dark cloak stands on top of a tall pile of corpses. The mouths of the victims are open in a dying scream, and the bodies are covered with thick dark blood. In order to become dark, one must make just such a sacrifice. Lord Felisa sprawled in his chair. A smoking pipe is smoking in his hands, the air is full of smoke. The master of the order is standing next to him. In front of the men, Taney stands humbly with her head bowed. The aristocrat orders the master to punish the boy. Kron unsheathes his sword. The master's face is full of determination to implement the master's order. A strong hand grips the hilt of a sword. He is focused on the task at hand. Taney activates the wolf spirit. He doubted that he would be able to defeat both opponents with this level of mana. Big drops of sweat roll down the boy's face. The master of the order assumed a battle stance. He holds a sword with both hands. A guy is standing in front of him. Behind him, the wolf spirit opened its mouth wide. Vortexes of energy filled the room. The Lord exchanged glances with his charge. They understood that the boy was quite a strong opponent. Kron said that the boy possessed the second level of power. That is, either he is from a noble family or a genius. Taini stood in the middle of the room. His body was covered in mana and it glowed blue. Not a thread of mana leaked out or disappeared. The fight stopped for a minute. Taini and the wolf stood in the middle of the room. Before them stood Karn, sword drawn. Lord still remained sitting in the chair. He asked the boy where he studied. The boy put his hand on his heart. He exhaled and said that his parents, who had come to Phils as refugees, had taught him how to use mana. Over time, his powers grew and he became more skilled. The Lord's face did not show whether he believed the little one or not. He looked carefully. Many thoughts swarmed in his head. A frown crossed his face. The aristocrat looked at the boy with sly eyes. His look showed only that he did not fully believe in the boy's words. The mouth twisted into a smile. Taini stood in front of the men. His wolf spirit stood behind him. The Lord told the boy that certain time should live in him until his person found out the details of the boy's family history. Taini bowed politely to the master of the house and put his hand over his heart as a sign of respect. He agreed to the Lord's terms, because he had no other option. The boy felt danger for himself. The Lord looked at the boy with satisfaction. A smile played on the aristocrat's face. The face took on a predatory look. Taini the slave looked at his master. Large drops of sweat rolled down his face. He was thinking only of the ledger he had handed over to the Duke. 15 days will be needed to assemble the punitive army. The owner was sitting across from the boy. He waved the pipe. Smoke filled the room. The Lord said that the secret guest would be arriving in a week, so the boy had to learn etiquette quickly. Taini in a black workout suit is warming up in the middle of the gym. He thinks about how to get out of the situation. The first option that came to mind was escape. Taini stands in front of a handsome man in a suit. He is holding a sheet of paper with a boy's portrait drawn on it. He may be wanted. The boy's eyes are strained. A deep meaning can be read in them. He mentally dismisses the idea of running away from Lord Fia's house. After all, then he will not be able to meet the emperor. The boy begins to move and perform exercises with his hands. He thinks that although he does not have enough strength now, he has always fought his enemies to the end. This is the only principle of his life. You can see the boy's well-developed musculature. He performs exercises with his hands, the air whistles around him. Sweat runs down the face. The second solution concerns the guest himself. A well-furnished hall in which a cleaning lady works. Chandeliers with many candles give light to the entire great hall. Taini thinks about the fact that in the house the timer does not go up for the arrival of a guest. The guy in the fighter's stance in the middle of the hall closed his eyes. All his thoughts revolve around the secret guest who was supposed to arrive. Until then, something must happen in the Lord's house. Then the visit will be postponed. The cook, dressed in a uniform, pours something similar to soup into a bowl with a ladle. He and the man holding the bowl are looking somewhere in surprise. People in the dining room look in surprise at the little guy who is eating a chicken leg with appetite. Next to him is a pile of empty bowls. Everyone present is interested in how such a baby can eat so much. The pile of empty bowls is growing. Taini eats a lot to remove the dissonance with her manatil. People at the next table are surprised to eat small meals. They think he is a descendant of dwarves. Tainy was engrossed in eating food and did not notice how a very tall, broad-shouldered man appeared next to him. The man's hair and beard were blue. This giant was dressed in full armor. The man folded his hands on his chest and stood over the child. The giant asked the boy if he was the vagabond raised by the dogs. Tainy continued to nibble on a piece of meat impassively. Tainy, holding a gnawed bone in her hands, looks surprised at the man who demands at least a little respect from the little one. The boy replies that an adult who clings to children does not deserve respect. He pokes the man's armor with a bone and calls him a piece of shit. The man is very unhappy about this. He gets angry. He smashes the table Tainy was sitting at with one punch. The bowls and everything that was on the table are flying around the dining room with a crash in all directions. A mustachioed man at the next table tries to calm the giant in armor so that he does not touch the child. The master of the order appears behind the man and tells the giant to continue. Tainy sits calmly on the chair. He looks down on men. Offers them to continue. The boy himself guesses that they are trying to test his abilities. A crowd of people is standing on a large trampled square surrounded by tents and various weapons. They all look at the two opponents facing each other. He is a boy and a tall stocky man. A tall man with blue hair and a beard, dressed in armor, looks predatory and rubs his hands. He boasts that he will personally teach and put the boy in his place. A guy in armor stands relaxed in front of a man. He keeps his hands in his pockets and nonchalantly asks the knight if he is absolutely sure of this. The knight is determined and serious. In a loud commanding voice, he orders the boy to pick up his sword and start fighting, and after that he will deal with the impudent kid in a second. The boy, without taking his hands out of his pockets, lightly kicks the knight under the knees. A pile of dust is rising. The giant in armor did not expect to be attacked like this. The enraged knight attacks the little one. However, he evades the extremely strong blow of the enemy. He crouches down, activates mana, and prepares to attack in his usual manner. The boy kicks the knight on the legs. The boy's legs glow with a blue glow and he knocks his opponent down with one leg that bends at an unusual angle. The man in armor begins to fall on his side. The man looks at his feet in surprise. He activated his mana. A red glow covers the legs. The captain does not give up, because he cannot lose the snuffer. The knight, towering above the boy's head, with a loud cry swings both hands and is ready to crush the boy who had the audacity to embarrass himself in front of his comrades. Tainy rushes headlong between the enemy's legs and leaps through just as the armored giant lands a mighty blow to the ground. A pile of dust is rising. The boy jumped high into the air. The knight turns his head in surprise to see where the boy has gone. With great surprise, he sees his opponent high above him. The boy is burned on the knight's neck. He wraps his hands around his neck as if he is going to strangle him. Hands glow blue. The knight is frightened and does not understand how the boy ended up there. Tainy promises not to kill. A defeated man in armor lies on the square. Tainy is standing next to him. He rubs his hands together triumphantly. The crowd behind is enthusiastically watching the result of the duel. People cannot believe what happened. Shocked people watch the boy's victory over Captain Grant. Their eyes are wide open in astonishment and they can hardly believe what they have just seen. Satisfied with himself, Tainy watches as his opponent is carried on the shoulders of men. A smug smile plays on the boy's face. His hands are folded across his chest. The boy looks at how his opponent was removed from the battlefield and thinks that now he will definitely not be chased away, because he defeated such an opponent without using the spirit. He was completely satisfied with the result. Sitting at the long dining table is Lord Felisa. Maids serve and set the table. Tainy was kneeling by the table. Lord says he underestimated the boy. Tainy thanks him for his trust. The boy was seated at the table. The maid serves him a steak on a white plate. The boy's eyes showed that he was surprised and did not expect such a reception. Lord Felice sits with a pipe in his teeth. He tells the boy not to be afraid. This steak is prepared from a young calf. And there will be plenty of food. He believes that a good appetite is a hidden source of strength. Tainy says that all power is given by God. And the fact that the knight behaved carelessly is the hidden reason for the boy's victory. The Lord sits opposite the boy and looks at him intently. He says that the boy knows the rules of etiquette and history well. However, the Lord does not know of any noble families with dark hair. The aristocrat smokes again. He looks carefully at the boy and tells him that he is interested in a mysterious guest who will arrive soon. And that the guest will definitely find use for the boy's talent. Tainy is focused on training in the paddock next to the training dummies. He looks worried. He is nervous because of the unknown guest and because of the Lord's words. The boy's movements are fast and almost imperceptible to the eye. Kron and Lord Felisa stand enveloped in a purple glow. Tainy is thinking about them. He believes that the level of skill and strength in these men is the same. How can you compare a mage and a mana lord? The guy is doing push-ups on the parking lot. He thinks about the fact that he spent the most time on reaching the second level in his past life. But now he will train more persistently and diligently. Tainy practices the moves. Drops of sweat run down his face. Mana light surrounds the boy's body. He believes that his strength, weight and flexibility indicators have increased and he feels better than in his previous life. The boy looks carefully at his hands. The idea that you need to practice the basics of knowledge and body and you don't need to become as big and pumped up as in the past life is spinning in your head. Soldiers who came for training see the boy. They say that this is the monster that beat Captain Grant, and decide to do their exercises elsewhere. Tainy continued to eat a lot. He was surrounded by empty bowls and maids carrying more food. The boy continued to train hard. After some time, the fight with Grant was forgotten. One of the commanders of the order found the boy. This is a tall man in good armor. He said that Lord Felice had a high regard for the young man's skills and abilities, so he ordered the boy to be armed. 2 guards armed with halberds stand near the large iron-framed wooden door. A man sneaks around the castle. Tainy and the commander are standing in front of the armory door. The boy tells the man that he has not found suitable armor and weapons for himself, because he prefers hammers or axes. Tainy asked the knight if he could find something similar to the commander's sword. The man proudly places his hand on his sword. The handle glows blue. He proudly states that this is no ordinary sword and that he required a high level of skill from the master to create such a weapon. The commander shows the boy his unusual sword. Tainy says that then this weapon must surely belong to him, because it should be used by a talented warrior. It will even contribute to the prosperity of the Lord. A knight with a sword in his hands looks angrily at the boy he was leaning over. The boy looks at the man boastfully and carelessly and offers a duel, the winner of which will own the sword. Tainy looks at the commander with a sly look. A sword can be seen near the boy's neck, the blade of which the boy presses against his neck with his bare hand. He offers the knight to cut off the boy's head in case of victory. The knight does not hold back and swings his sword at the boy. The man's face is distorted with rage. His mouth is wide open in a battle cry. The boy stands calmly and unmoved in front of the enemy. The guards listen to the sounds that come through the closed doors of the armory. The faces of the soldiers are surprised and interested. One of them leans his ear against the door to eavesdrop. Suddenly the door opened and a boy came out of the armory. He is badly beaten and tired, and leans on a sword wrapped in rags. The soldiers look at this boy in surprise, not understanding what happened. Soldiers and servants look at the boy who wanders down the corridor, leaning on his sword. They say that the younger and more talented a person is, the more problems he has. The servant sends Tani a worried look. The maids pitifully ask the beaten boy what happened to him. The little one replies that it's okay and sends them off to rest. Lord Felisa sits in a chair in the center of the dimly lit room. The butler serves him, pouring something into a glass. The aristocrat propped his head with his hand and is worried about something. An aristocrat holds a glass in his hands, looking at the contents. The butler bowed to his master. The lord with a worried face asked the servants what happened to the victims. The servant replied that they were at their disposal. The lord releases the butler. The face of the aristocrat is worried, even a little scared. He understands that when the boy turns out not to be from the family he thought, they will both pay a terrible price. However, the lord is sure that the boy is from a noble and respectable family, because he has such talent and knows the basics of etiquette and history. Tani stood before the aristocrat's inner gaze. A nobleman, dressed in a light white shirt, is lying in bed. He is thinking that a mysterious guest will appear as soon as possible to clarify the situation. Suddenly, the wind hears the sounds of warning magic. Lord gets up to see what is distracting him from sleep. At this moment, the boy pierces the aristocrat's chest with a magic sword. Blood splatters everywhere. The blade of the sword emerges from the victim's back. The nobleman's eyes rolled. He is completely covered in blood, which pours from the pierced chest, in which a sword is visible. A mute question is read in the look of who killed him and for what. The frightened maid covers her mouth with her hands. Another servant and a butler are heading towards her. The servant saw the dead master and screams. A crowd of knights of the order gathered over the bloody body of the master lying on the bed. They are surprised by the condition of the lord's body and realize that he was a dark mage. A knight with a mustache named Glenn says that the priest has already been and will inform the Imperial Investigation Department about the demonic energy that was raging around the dead man. The Emperor's men will arrive soon. The knights look disapprovingly at the deceased. Glenn bowed his head. It is difficult for the knight to understand how an aristocrat could make such a choice, lose his honor and tarnish his centuries-old lineage. Suddenly, the knights turn their attention to the sword still in the lord's body. They understand that this is the sword of their commander. But it's hard for them to believe it. Someone asks if the boy personally communicated with the aristocrat. The knights are still standing over the dead host's body as it begins to rapidly decompose. Someone present remembered how the Lord told Tani that he was the next contender for the position of commander of the order. Glenn stands opposite the knights. He is full of determination and indignation and says that a small investigation is necessary to find the culprit and punish the crime. A knight with two serious companions stand in the middle of the corridor and interrogate two maids. The knight writes something down on a piece of paper. Glenn mentally compares the testimony of the armory guards who heard the strange noise. He also remembers the frightened and worried faces of the maids who saw Tani beaten. The knight called the boy for questioning. Tani says that the commander of the order did not give him a weapon, but he beat him very badly. The knight with a thoughtful look understands that everything points to the same person. The knight jumped up from the table where he was sitting. The knight's eyebrows drew together on the bridge of his nose in anger. He hit the table with his hand, encased in patchwork gloves, and said that the captain had been seen in the armory, and then he disappeared. The guy and Glenn are sitting across from each other at the table. The knight asks Taney if he saw anything suspicious in the commander's behavior. The boy says that the captain was angry with him and the lord. The guy leaves the room where the interrogation took place. He thinks about what he remembers about the face of the interlocutor. In Taney's head, thoughts are brewing that no one can be trusted. The next morning, Glenn called the boy to him. They were sitting at the table. Taney was holding the mercenary token the knight had given him. Along with this, he promised to give money and recommendations to the boy. The knight smiles and gives a thumbs up. He advises the boy to listen to a person who has life experience, to get out of this place and not to dwell on his talent here. Taney thanks for the advice and smiles back. He says that he himself wanted to do the same. The boy thinks that the emperor's investigators will not come to Phil's and that he must go to them himself. A boy stands in the middle of a deserted square of an ancient city. The roofs of the buildings are covered with light tiles. The city is flooded with sunlight. He thinks that Glenn will have a hard time alone without a lord and a commander. Suddenly, a white wolf appears in front of him. He wags his tail and looks kindly at the boy. The wolf's tongue is stuck out. He squats a little on his paws. The animal offers to saddle her. Taney mounts the wolf. The boy smiles with delight. The animal's mouth is open and the tongue is visible. The boy notes that the spirit has become smaller in physical form. The guy mentions that the size of the spirit's physical body depends on the level of training of the person calling. Taney sits on a wolf and activates mana abilities. They glow with a blue glow. A boy sits on a big wolf. Their bodies are enveloped in the glow of mana. The wolf's gaze is firm and confident. Taney is fascinated by this sight and the appearance of his animal. The wolf became stronger and stronger. Suddenly, the wolf jumps up and runs through the streets of the city. The wind whistles around them both. The boy did not expect this. His eyes widened in fright. He grabs the wolf's fur on the withers with his hands. A wolf with a boy on his back rushes along a forest road. The feelings of both merged into a single entity. Taney plans to get to the first place on the continent where the disaster happened before the demon army arrived. The guy is thinking about getting to the city of Karun, where the first disaster happened. In this city, a divine object, given by the goddess to the subjects, disappeared. A goddess surrounded by divine light and 7 colored spheres. She gives her subjects 7 relics, which should become a stronghold and the last hope of the human heart in difficult times. The guy's face is serious. The eyes are determined and serious. Taney thinks that he will prevent misfortune from happening on the continent, become a strong warrior, and defeat the demon army that will come to the continent. A crowd of men and women stand in front of a notice board. They worry that the emperor's investigators will soon arrive to investigate the death of Lord Fias, who was a dark mage. It's night outside. The stars shine brightly in the sky. A mysterious silhouette of a man in a hood approaches the destroyed guard at the gate. The soldier nervously clutches the spear shaft in his hands. With startled eyes, the guards look at the hooded stranger approaching them. They try to defend themselves by raising and aiming their spears at the stranger. He does not pay attention to the soldier. A mysterious hooded figure raises his hand and the soldiers on guard fall to the ground. Their eyes are empty. The stranger warns that people should not interfere in matters that do not concern them. The windows of the great manor of Lord Fias illuminate the darkness of the night with large windows from which light pours. Alleys and approaches to the estate are illuminated with lanterns. A knight in armor stands in the middle of the hall. He holds a letter in his hands and reads from it. A man scratches his chin with one hand. He looks worried. Suddenly there is a loud knock on the door. The knight turned sharply at the sound. He saw that generous guest. The man with a surprised face pulled out a sword from his sheath with a quick movement of his hand and aimed it at the stranger. The knight asked who this guest was. A stranger in a long cloak and a hood pulled up over his eyes appears in the middle of the room. The features of the guest's face are more like women's. He has thin narrow shoulders and a tall slender figure. Mysterious raises his hand and snaps his fingers. A dark red glow envelopes the fingers. He turns to the knight and asks to tell everything that is known about the death of the lord. The knight with empty eyes stands in front of the stranger, to whom he tells about the circumstances of the death and informs him where the body of the aristocrat is, hidden by order of the investigators of the imperial court. The narrow, fragile chin of the stranger is visible from behind the hood. The rest of the face is in shadow. He raises his finger up and tells the knight that he will fall asleep now and will not remember anything later. The knight wakes up under one of the pillars supporting the roof of the house. He holds his head. In his mind, he says that he worked a lot and was tired, that's why he fell asleep in such an unexpected place. A frightened soldier in armor runs to the knight. He says that the body of Lord Fias has disappeared. He understands that the body is a very important piece of evidence, which is evidence of the involvement and intervention of dark forces. Under the shining bright starry sky, the night forest, not far from the Lord's manor, a hooded stranger is heading along the path. His path is illuminated by a light layer in front of him. A man in a hood finds the corpse of the master of the order. A pack of wolves gathered near him and began to stretch the dead body. The stranger holds the sword of the murdered man and realizes that the owner has been dead for a long time. The hood slides off and part of the stranger's face is visible. He has fine facial features and orange eyes with green eyelashes. The stranger thinks that the boy who killed the bandit wolf is to blame for everything. Gate in the fortress wall. Soldiers are on guard. A crowd of people is going through the gate into the city. With violence, they carry something or leave empty-handed. A small boy walks through the crowd. Taney follows a paved road inside the city. A merchant stall stands on the roadside. The boy understands that the city is quiet so far and there are a lot of guests. However, the course of events can change quickly. The guy shakes out 2 gold coins from his wallet. He wants to buy himself new clothes and some equipment. However, the money turns out to be little and not enough for the purchase. In his mind, the little boy is still grateful to the knight. Robbers who saw the gold coins approach the boy on the street. One bandit holds a long sharp knife in his hands. Another draws a short sword from its sheath. They lean towards the boy with a greedy look. Armed bandits with grimaces crouched over the boy. He shows no fear. He keeps his hands in his pockets and looks at the thieves. They offer to give the money to them as long as they ask politely. The guy clenches his hands into fists and crunches them. He looks at the robbers without a shadow of fear and asks if they have any money and if they are willing to share it with him. The boy stands over the bodies of the robbers he beat. He throws up a wallet in his hands. People look in surprise, amazed by the fact that Rufus's family, still invincible, lay spread out on the cobblestones. Beaten bandits rise to their knees. The boy stands in front of them and asks if they are as strong as the knights. The robbers look fiercely and angrily at the little boy who is holding a wallet in his hands. The thieves, shouting and mouths wide open, pounce on the boy. They move very fast. One of the men is holding a sword in his hands, which he brought to attack. Tainy swings and drops her wallet. It lands right in the face of one of the attackers and knocks him down. He falls on his back and flies to the ground. The other stands and watches in awe. The boy's leg is stamped into the face of another robber. The thief's nose is pressed into the middle of the skull. The bodies of the robbers are again spread out on the cobblestones. A wallet lies at his feet. The guy slowly walks towards the wallet. Satisfied with himself and with joy in his eyes, Tainy smiles and pours a handful of gold coins from his wallet into his hand. He hears the threats of the robbers that their boss will not leave it so easily and will punish the little one. The cobbled street ends at a neat, large house covered with light tiles. There is a pile of tubs, a watering can and other household equipment near the house. A guy in armor is standing in the middle of the room. He holds a mace in his hands. Next to the boy stands a man who extols his armor and weapons. He says that the armor is made of the hide of an iron bull and protects well. Tainy tests the weapon and swings it in evaluation. The gunsmith admires the boy and his skill. The men outside the window look at the boy and conclude that they should not come close to him. The armorer leans over to the boy and curiously asks him what he is preparing for and whether this will be followed by some grandiose event. The boy says that he should not doubt it. Dressed in leather armor, Tainy runs down the city street, hurrying to meet the young Lady Valencia. In his hands, he clutches a battle club that he bought at the armory. Lady Valencia, her bodyguard and a young man in a blue suit are walking down the city street. They are surrounded by knights in iron armor. The man says that the city of Licentia is the largest city in the region. The guy raised his finger and enthusiastically, with enthusiasm, tells that the city is famous for its night markets and salmon. The girl lowered her eyes a little. It is clear that she is not interested in this information. She turns to the interviewer and asks to get to the bottom of the matter. He is confused by the girl's behavior. She asks to show her the slums of the city, where beggars and the poor live. The man walks forward and motions for the girl to follow him. The young man is confused by the girl's request. However, she replies that the poor and the lower strata are also her subjects. The girl remains alone on the street. She is worried and thinks that she wants to change people's attitude towards the poor. However, he understands that it is very difficult to do. Thinking about going to the temple. Lady Valencia saw a small boy standing in the middle of the square. He held an iron mace in his hands. Knights, bodyguards in armor ran to him. The boy remained calm and stood motionless. The boy stood with his legs wide apart and clutched a gold ring in his raised hand. Everyone paid attention to him. The kid said that this ring was given to him by Lady Valencia. Tainy knelt before the lady, her bodyguard, and the young man giving the tour of the city. The boy said that although he was late, he wanted to show his respect for the young aristocrat. The girl looked at the boy in surprise, not recognizing him and not understanding what he wanted. Her face is visible through the hole in the ring, which Tainy held high. The lady was admiring the ring in her hands. Tainy was kneeling before her. The girl says that she gave the ring to a child in a poor neighborhood, and does not understand how it ended up in the boy's possession. Tainy looks startled at the sword suddenly at his throat. The boy does not understand what caused such a reaction and behavior of the bodyguard of respectable persons. The boy was surrounded by bodyguards in armor. From behind them is Lady Valencia. She is angry and very indignant, because she believes that the boy stole the ring from the child, to whom the aristocrat gave the precious thing. Taini lowered his head with an expression of remorse. The guards did not remove the swords, and they remained at the boy's throat. He says that it is hard to believe, but that child is himself. The aristocrat does not believe the boy. She still has a very serious expression on her face. The lady's guard unsheathes her sword. Taini says that he just grew up really fast since meeting Lady Valentia. The girl and her security can't believe it. She pokes her finger at the boy and does not believe his words, because then he was thin and dirty, but cute. Taini notes that the lady is very fond of cute things. The guy whose swords were taken away spreads his arms wide and activates his mana. The air around him begins to glow blue. The little one has a sly smile. A small puppy appears in the girl's arms, which she hugs tightly and admires the puppy. The puppy is not very happy. The guard says it's a spirit and they don't know what it is. The lady's bodyguard looks suspiciously at the boy. She thinks that the boy has a weapon and a fighting spirit. An aristocrat holds a puppy in her arms. There is a guard nearby. The lady asks the boy what the name of the puppy is. He answers that Lunovavk, and in Western languages Moon Wolf. The guard and the lady are amazed that the kid knows languages. Surrounded by soldiers in armor, ex-boy explains that it is thanks to the mana that he has changed physically and speaks different languages. The guard does not trust the child and begins to draw a sword to protect the mistress. The lady's bodyguard stands in front of her with a drawn sword. Edmund is standing next to him. He supports the redhead. The young man with a serious face says that the boy should be detained for further investigation. An aristocrat holds a puppy in her arms. Taini turns to her, asking her to help him meet with the duke. The guard looks at the landlady in surprise. A young man angrily clenches his fists. Taini again stands surrounded by armed men. Outraged by his behavior and words, the lady's bodyguard holds a sword over him. Taini asks if they really think the little boy could be a threat to the duke. The knights and the guard lowered their weapons. They are relaxed. Lady Valentine's bodyguard understands the absurdity of the actions, rubs the back of his head awkwardly. They are amazed that rumors of the duke's power have reached the children. The lady and the guard look at the boy. He put his hand to his heart as a sign of respect and politeness and says that he needs to meet with the duke to tell about the events in Phil's. Lady and her bodyguard Vivian are sitting in a richly decorated room. A puppy is sitting on the arms of the aristocrat. The security guard is confused and looks guilty. She says that she knew about the events in Felisa. The lady asks if the guard has not hidden anything from her. Vivian replies that she told everything. The lady looks up with relief and talks about an urgent trip to the main manor of the Valenti family. The guard sits across from the lady. She holds a puppy in her outstretched arms. The redhead is worried that the puppy can do something bad and poses a certain danger due to the unknown. Suddenly, with a noise, the puppy disappears and there is just a light cloud in the lady's arms. Both girls look in surprise at the place where the kitten used to be. A boy stands in front of a man in a blue suit. He says that Taini behaves familiarly. The little one is holding his war mace in his hands. Man's hands in pockets. Taini looks at the aristocrat, who has his arms folded across his chest. The boy asks what the aristocrat knows about dark mages. The man replies that he does not know anything. The boy accuses the man of lying. He swings his hand to hit the boy, because he insulted the honor of the young man. The latter's face is red with anger. The aristocrat's hand approaches the boy's face with a whistle. Taini catches the man's hand and squeezes it with her own. The man looks at the boy angrily and in surprise. Edwin looks in surprise at his hand, which is being squeezed by the boy. His face is red with rage and drops of sweat are running down it. He asks the boy what's wrong and how he stopped the blow. A boy holds a man's hand. He squeezes the man's hand tightly. The man is shouting. He is outraged by the boy's behavior and what he allows himself in the presence of an aristocrat. Frightened by the disappearance, Lady Valentia sends Vivian to help the boy, because the spirit disappeared for a reason and the boy is far away from the manor. A red-haired girl rushes to fulfill the orders of her mistress. A man and a boy approach a tall building with balconies. The building is flooded with sunlight, but the surrounding atmosphere portends something bad. The man looks slyly at the little one. In the eyes of the aristocrat is hidden some danger and evil intent towards the little one. A man with a worried face opens the door for the arrivals. He asks the aristocrat why he came so early, because it is still too early to collect taxes or collect goods. There are stout men in the room. A man with a strong physique in a brown shirt in front of everyone is the head of the Rufus bandit family. The aristocrat points his hand at the boy and orders the leader of the bandits to punish the boy for misbehaving with the nobles. The bandit is surprised to note that this is just an ordinary child. Lord tickles the bandit leader with his hand on the face. He shouts at him that he asked to punish the boy, not to quarrel with an aristocrat. The leader orders 2 henchmen to deal with the boy. 2 bandits resolutely go to carry out the order of the chief. One of them has a stout build and a broken nose, the other is thin and half-shined. The bandits approach the boy and look at him in surprise. They realize that this is the boy who beat them on the street and took the wallet with money. Near the aristocrat and the leader of the bandits who did not follow the order are sitting on the floor. One of them is on his knees, the other is lying on the ground pointing his hand at the boy. They ask the leader to take revenge on the little one. The leader of the gang, with a face red with rage and distorted with anger, clutches a huge mace with sharp spikes in his hand. He says that the boy crossed the line and will be punished for it. A tall and strong figure of a man with a mace, which he grips in both hands and swings from behind to strike, towers over the boy, who is standing motionless. The man shouts that it's over. The boy swings and parries the man's furious attack with his mace. That Storkma flies away from the blow. The aristocrat and the leader's henchmen look at the result of the battle in surprise. They are surprised and scared. Fear is reflected in their eyes and faces. Lord Edwin crawls to the beaten bandit leader. He asks the bandit to protect him. Taney follows the young noble with weapons in hand. The boy's eyes glow red, his body glows with the glow of mana. The frightened thugs look at Taney and the bodies of the leader and the aristocrat lying in front of the boy. The boy is surprised that this is all that the bandit leader managed. The little one turns his head and smiles. He asks the bandits what they are going to do now. The door opens with a thud. Vivian bursts into the room with a scream. She puts her right hand forward and her face shows the fear that she might not be able to make it in time. The girl approaches the scattered bodies of bandits lying on the floor. She holds a sword in her hands. Taney is sitting on a safe that is being carried by 2 men. The boy is looking at a book in his hands. The men tiredly put the safe on the floor. The guy slipped out of the safe and asked the red-haired girl what Dad was doing here and why he had come. Vivian said it was Lady Valentia's order. The guy gives a book to the surprised Vivian. He says that the book contains the sums and list of taxes and bribes for human trafficking, which was carried out by bandits under the guise of Lord Edmund A. Vivian, Lady Valentine and Taney ride in a carriage. The lady is holding a puppy in her hands. The boy says that now Lord Edmund will suffer a punishment worthy of his dark deeds, which were clearly outside the law. The lady poked the boy with her finger. She said that she completely trusts the boy and admires his actions. However, Tainy should immediately inform her about all her affairs. 3 days later, the carriage drives through the dark night forest. She is surrounded by a guard of knights in armor. Someone in the carriage asks why they stopped abruptly. The carriage stopped. Red-haired Vivian lends a hand and helps Lady Valentine out of the carriage. A knight and Tainy stand nearby. A person in a dark hood looks at them. The stranger took off his hood. A tall elf with green hair appeared under the hood. She bowed before the person of noble blood and put her hand in a sign of respect. Vivian looked at the elf with admiration. Lady Valentine was smiling and also looking with delight at the stranger who stopped their walk. The elf plays the lute. A young elf is feeding and stroking a horse. Elves are descendants of fairies, who are famous for their beauty. Their kingdom is in the far west. In the kingdom of Aslan, they are difficult to meet. The elf in the green suit raised her hands for the bird to sit on her. People do not fear and respect elves, because they are natural summoners and conjurers of spirits. Elves are also famous for their integrity and kindness. Lady Valentine and her guards are talking to a stranger. They smile and show interest in the conversation. A puppy is sitting on the arms of an aristocrat. An elf is talking to a young lady. The elf says that she is going to the Beastmen Kingdom to learn something new and train. The aristocrat guesses that they will train knights, elves. The stranger points her finger at the puppy in the lady's arms and asks if she is the one who summoned this spirit. The aristocrat looks at the elf in surprise, because she quickly recognized the spirit. Lady Valentine and Vivian say that the real host of the spirit is Tainy. Women look at a guy who is embarrassed by the excessive attention. Tainy recognizes a dark energy raging in an unfamiliar elf. The stranger smiles mysteriously and extends her hand forward. A flame lights up in the outstretched hand of the night guest. She says that the meeting is fateful for the boy and shows him the skills of magic. Tainy is amazed that the elf can release. Everyone is fascinated by the fire burning in the palm of the night traveler. Tainy mentally calculates the probability of winning a battle with a possessor of this level of mastery of dark magic. The guy clenches his fists and comes to the decision that it is necessary to guess the moment and attack the opponent unexpectedly. The puppy breaks out of the lady's arms Valentine and jumps into the arms of the surprised Vivian. The girl clearly did not expect this and still puts her hands up. Tainy looks on indifferently. The elf smiles and says that she also does not mind holding such a cute puppy in her arms. Tainy takes the bitch from the hands of a dissatisfied Vivian. The guy smiles and offers the night stranger to hold the kitten, but asks if he really does not mind. The boy agrees. A stranger stretches out her arms to take the kitten in her arms. The puppy clearly does not want this. His face is furrowed and shows no sympathy. Suddenly, the figure of the elf is enveloped in a dark purple aura. The spirit of the wolf takes its manhwa form. He attacks the elf. Tainy tries to attack the stranger with a weapon, but runs into a barrier. Unexpectedly, a sword blow flies in the elf's side. She is surprised. The sword pierces the defense and a blood stain appears on the elf's side at the wound site. Vivian pierced the magical barrier around the elf's body with her sword. The wounded woman looks with fear at the red-haired girl, who is trying to push her sword further. Surrounded by a magical aura, the elf asks Lady Valentine when they realized she was a dark mage. The aristocrat angrily holds her fist to her chest. Unexpectedly for everyone, a dark purple sphere flew into the air and quickly moved away from Tainy and Vivian. The guy is talking. That they did not get into the heart of the magician. The sphere with the elf inside hovered high above the ground. At Vivian's command, the guard, consisting of knights, rushed to attack the stranger. Dark purple flashes ran across the sphere. Tainy was the first to reach the enemy. The elf folded her hands in a protective sign. The boy activated the mana and crashed into the sphere around the enemy. The boy flies away from the sphere, thrown back by it. The dark purple sphere was cracked where Tainy had hit it. However, the defense did not weaken. Vivian attacks the elf from below. She brought her sword to strike and rapidly approaches her opponent. The elf sees that the red-haired girl intends to attack her. The elf's face is twisted with rage. She calls her opponents parasites, puts her hand forward and releases a dark bolt of energy, similar to lightning. Covered in purple energy, the knights and Vivian can no longer attack and are pushed back far. The redhead's face expresses anger and pain. Around the elf, the hair and cloak of the magician swells. She tries to concentrate a lump of powerful energy in her hands and use it as a weapon. In the place where the figure of the dark sorceress was, a dark purple vortex of energy plays. Tainy covers her eyes and stares at the vortex of energy. The knights are also watching this. The boy is thrown away by the explosion. He flies over the ground and hits the surface with force. Vivian, with anger and determination, orders the soldiers to attack the sorceress while she weakens her defenses. Behind the red-haired warrior, knights with shields and swords rush to attack. With a scream, the sorceress uses magic and repels the squad of knights who tried to attack her. Dark energy rages around the figure of the elf. Riding a wolf, rushes to the elf, around whom is a barrier of dark energy. He clutches a war stick in his hands. The wolf and the rider are rapidly approaching the enemy. At this moment, Vivian and the knight pile on the sorceress from above. Above their heads, they bring their swords to attack the elf, who clenches her teeth tightly and thinks about how to deal with so many opponents. The elf stands in the protective sphere and looks down. With steel notes in her voice, the sorceress says that only one person is to blame for the situation that has developed. But as a result, all her opponents must die. Tainy riding a wolf and a red-haired warrior with a sword attack the sorceress together. The boy shouts to the elf that he hopes to win the fight in vain. Vivian and Tainy from two sides attack the sphere in which the sorceress is located. There are cracks in the field. The sorceress crouches down and closes her hands inside the sphere. Tainy falls on the sphere with the sorceress inside and swings her war stick. The faces of the opponents tremble with rage and anger. From a powerful impact, the ball with the witch inside flies into the ground. A cloud of dust and earth hides her from the eyes of her opponents. Tainy and Vivian look down on the result of their actions. A sphere with a sorceress on the ground. There are cracks in the field. The sorceress holds her head. Knights armed with swords rush to her. Tainy rushes to the sorceress, who flew into the air in the protective sphere. He flies, covered in a blue and dark purple glow. He covers his face with his hand, and in his other hand he holds a battle club. The guy attacks the sphere with a war stick. Vivian attacks the sphere with her sword. There are bigger and bigger cracks in the field. The witch is tense, she tries to maintain the protection of the sphere. Lady Valentine and the knights watch as the sphere in which the sorceress was hiding explodes in the air. A dark purple flash blinds observers. Tainy is thrown away from the epicenter of the explosion. The sphere around the sorceress disappeared. The elf stands on shaky legs. She covers the wound on her left side with her hands and tries to stop the blood flowing from the wound. A grimace of pain on his face. Lunovovk rushes to the wounded sorceress. She bent down right in front of him. Tani encourages her spirit to attack the elf. On the other hand, Vivin approaches the elf with a sword at the ready. She shouts to Tana that she should fiercely attack the sorceress once more and she will surrender. Deprived of protection, the sorceress can barely stand on her feet. The figure of the sorceress begins to burn with a dark purple glow. The air around her fills with dark energy and pushes the red-haired warrior away from her wounded opponent. Tani rides a wolf through a storm of demonic energy. Both of their faces are focused and intent on ending the battle with the sorceress. In Tani's hands is a war stick. The guy reaches for the sorceress with his weapon. The boy's energy and the demonic energy released by the elf intertwine. The latter closes against a blow with the hands. When the cloud of dust and smoke dissipates, everyone present sees the elf running away from the battlefield. The people below shout that they need to chase the fugitive and finish her off. Tani lifted his head to catch a glimpse of the fugitive. The witch levitated high in the sky. She is surrounded by a vortex of purple demonic energy. A dark figure in a horned helmet appeared behind her. The wounded sorceress raised her hand high up and was about to burn everything around, sacrificing herself to the demonic master and releasing the maximum amount of mana. Tani looked at Lady Valentine and Vivian, who was defending her mistress with a sword in her hands. The red-haired warrior screamed menacingly that it was Chloe's time. Lady Chloe Valentine crossed her arms over her chest and closed her eyes. Her figure began to glow with a golden glow. The lady's hair fluttered from the energy that filled the air around her. Chloe raised her folded hands high, in which a golden orb was burning. The medallion on the noblewoman's neck also lit up with golden light. From the lady's lips came the phrase that there was light. Tani looked at Chloe and knew that she was hiding her true power. Such power was given by God himself, and it was possessed either by heroes, or by holy people, or by priests. The powerful stream of energy released by Lady Valentia crashed into the witch's protective sphere. The elf watched with surprise and growing horror as the barrier began to let energy through. The aristocrat looked at the pillar of fire that rose from the ground to the place where the sphere with the sorceress was and which the lady attacked with her light energy, given by the god for virtue and goodness. The elf is sitting on the ground amid a cloud of dust that rose up after the fall of the sphere. The witch looks on in shock and can't believe that she was defeated like this. She says that she cannot lose to bad guys. Tani interrupts the witch's train of thought. He walks up to her and hits her on the head with a war club. The knights are stunned by such behavior of the boy. Valentine and her red-haired girl guard rush to the boy. They say that Tani hastened to finish off the sorceress, because she had to be interrogated first. An aristocrat and a boy stand over the body of an elf. Lady says that she could not sense the dark energy of the sorceress despite the fact that she is a priestess and has the gift and skill. She wonders why the elf did that. Tani communicates with Lady Valentine. She regrets that she discovered and demonstrated her power to everyone, because not even all of the young nobleman's relatives knew about it. The aristocrat strokes the boy's head and says that he is not guilty of allowing the dark sorceress into the post office. Vivian comes over and they tease Tani about how he's still very young. As the red-headed warrior taunts and toys with Tani, Lady Chloe looks at the pool of blood left where the dark sorceress was. The lady says that the Duke must be warned. Lady Valentine walks with Tani and Vivian to the main gate of the Castle Taven. They are met by a crowd. People rejoice at the arrival of a person of noble blood and welcome him. In the town square, the lady and her honor are met by the mighty knights of the Order of the Blue Wing. The Duke's daughter cannot believe this, because these are the strongest and most elite warriors of the kingdom. The knights and their leader, with a clang and clang of armor, as if on command, fall to their knees before the arriving lady in her attendants. Dust rises from the ground. The knights are kneeling and standing in front of the aristocrat. Chloe thanked the knights for coming and personally to Sir Garin, the head of the knights' detachment. Sir Garin stood up. He put his fisted hand to his heart. He is wearing light-colored armor with gold inserts on the shoulders. He says that he is glad to see Lady Valentine. The knight tells the surprised lady and her companions that the Duke has left his residence and is on his way. The reason is that the family heirloom Tempest has disappeared. Everyone is shocked to hear. After all, the precious relic was very dear to the old Duke and he always carried it with him. But one morning he noticed that she was gone. Taney says she guesses what the missing relic is. Chloe looks at the boy in surprise, because she does not understand what he is talking about. The boy asks for an opportunity to meet the Duke. The knight leader, the red-haired guard, and the young lady look at Taney in surprise. He tells them that he knows the reason for the mysterious relic's disappearance. A carriage surrounded by knights is heading down the road. In front of the crew is the leader of the Knights of the Blue Wing, Sir Garin. A tall young knight walks beside him. The commander asks the young knight who this little boy is who accompanies the young Lady Valentine. Molodic answers that it is Taney and he made a huge contribution to the victory over the evil magician. The young knight then says that soon the boy will reach the level of an expert. The order commander cannot believe it. He is very surprised, because the guy is either talented or some kind of monster. Sir Garin frowns and says that he remembers the boy's name. It was he who signed the letters that came from Phil's and told about the events in it. Amazed by the beauty of the surrounding nature, Chloe, Vivian and Taney talk about the love story of the Duke and his dead wife. The red-haired bodyguard expresses delight at the love and relationship of the nobles. The guy carefully examines his hands. He thinks about finding the Duke as soon as possible and start training. Taney wants to become a skilled aura master and protect the continent from monsters. A huge city with high baths, fortress walls and main gates, closed with a lattice and with a bridge suspended on chains. The city is full of majestic buildings with domes. The soldiers rejoice, because after a long journey they have returned to their native lands in their native city of Valentino. It is one of the largest and richest cities in the kingdom. Chloe and Taney are surrounded by knights. The girl asks if the boy has been to this city before. The guy answers that now he is here for the first time. The aristocrat is surprised by the word now. The Duke rushed to his daughter. There are tears in his eyes and he spread his arms wide to hug his daughter. The girl awkwardly stepped aside. Jared tripped and fell right in front of the group of knights. The daughter noted that you should not show your feelings in public and should think about dignity. The knights knelt before the Duke and his daughter with mail. The nobleman thanks the knights for their service both as a duke and as a loving father. Then the aristocrat says that he has prepared a feast for everyone. The Duke looks at Taney and leans towards his daughter. He asks who this little boy is. Chloe's look shows that she is uncomfortable reminding her father, because she was talking about the boy. Duke awkwardly scratches the back of his head and says that he has been busy lately and he simply forgot what his daughter told him about. Taney stood before the Duke. The mighty figure of the aristocrat towered over the boy like a mountain. The boy looks into his eyes and tells the Duke that he has to give information about the Tempest. The Duke's eyes begin to glow with a blue glow. He looks at Taney and begins to press down on him using his aura. The air around the boy fills with energy and crushes the boy, pinning him to the ground. Taney decides to fight back against the Duke's power by using the spirit energy he has accumulated. The space between the Duke and the boy fills with mana energy and vibrates with power. The Duke is surprised. Chloe apologizes to her father for Taney's behavior and actions. The Duke frowns angrily and looks at his daughter. In his mind, he promises to figure it out and clarify the situation for himself. The Duke is sitting at the table in the office. Standing before him is Taney. The aristocrat asks if the boy knows anything about the disappearance of the relic. He replies that he only has a guess about it. The Duke, supporting his head with folded hands, looks intently at Taney and listens to what the boy is saying. Taney says that perhaps the relic has the ability to manipulate time. The Duke went to the window. He looks closely at Taney, noting that Taney knows the details and his story is very organized. The Tempest was indeed a family heirloom that could travel back in time. The Duke's face is doubtful. He doubts that he sacrificed his life and sent Taney back in time to change the course of history and prevent trouble on the continent. The Duke leans over the boy and says that he can't believe that he sent the boy into the past to train to fight the demonic forces, not himself. Taney puts her hands to her sides and says that at that moment the wounded Duke was talking about retaining and developing talent. Herzog says he sent the boy at a time when he would be most affected. The Duke sat down at the table. He stares at Taney and asks what other proof there is that he is from the future. The boy says that the Duke's first daughter was called Lilia, but he never liked the name. The Duke laughed at this. He says that even after the death of the woman, he could not admit this to anyone, and only in the face of death was he able to say this to another person. Duke and Taney walk through the residence. The aristocrat asks the boy to show his abilities, through which he should become a future knight, and what talent he should develop. The Duke folded his hands behind his back. Taney follows him. The nobleman asks the boy what events will precede the catastrophe and the invasion of demons on the continent. The aristocrat points to a bespectacled man standing below the bridge that Taney and the Duke are walking on. He orders the boy not to tell anyone except the Duke himself and this man. The Duke with a burning look asks the boy what he knows about the people who in the future have to unite the army to protect the continent from the onslaught of the demonic army. The guy replies that he doesn't know anything about it. The Duke screams and grabs his head. He is amazed that Taney was not interested in such facts and that the nobleman now does not know what to do with him. The Duke looks furiously at the sheet on which the boy was supposed to note the main events that preceded the invasion of demons. There is almost nothing on the letter, and the man is very angry about it. He looks at Taney reproachfully and asks if there is more reliable information about what happened next. The boy turns away from the Duke. He is uncomfortable and a little embarrassed. He wants to grow up faster. The Duke studies the notes carefully again. He rejoices at least in the fact that the prophecy mentions a saint and a hero who will appear and go together to defend the continent from the enemy invasion. Taney stands opposite the Duke. He reads in the letter that the hero's name is Cromwell and he is 20 years old. The guy notes that at the time of their meeting, the hero was 20. Now the hero is very small. Duke grabs his head. He blames his future self for making a mistake and sending little Taney to the past. The Duke's eyes are full of despair and terrible understanding. The Duke is angry. He calls the butler and angrily orders him to call Sir Drexler as soon as possible to order someone. Pristocrate stands with his hands folded on his chest. A tall man in silver and gold armor appears before Taney. The eyes are burning with fire. Hands clenched into fists. This is the vice-captain of the Order of the Blue Wing. The Duke points behind his back at the boy and tells the vice-captain to test the boy's abilities and capabilities. This is necessary to know whether it is worth spending time on studying. The knight stands in front of the duke and the boy. He holds a huge war hammer in his hands. Sir is amazed that he has to fight the little boy. The vice-captain panics that he might be demoted. The duke looks grimly at the knight. He says that he simply gave the task to very carefully check the boy's abilities as a fighter and the ability to use mana. The knight looks down at the boy in surprise. He thinks about what his lordship the duke was up to with this guy and why Drexler instructed to study the boy. Tiny, around which streams of mana rage. The knight understands that the boy has the second level of mana mastery and is not far from the rank of expert. The boy pokes his finger at the knight's hammer and asks which blacksmith forged such a weapon. Then he starts running around the hammer and pointing out how it would be better to make this weapon. The knight is surprised. The duke looks at Tani seriously and tells her that he was completely focused on the inspection and gave it his all. Otherwise, he will not live up to the duke's expectations and will violate their agreement. Also, the aristocrat turns to the knight and tells him to try to check the boy as much as possible, but not to kill him. The knight looks at his master in surprise. The duke raises his finger high and says that the fight will end when one of the opponents hits the other at least once. The knight widened his eyes in surprise. Opponents stand in the middle of the hall. The knight is armed with a huge war hammer, and the boy is clutching his war club. The duke stands at a distance and is ready to watch the duel. The duke sees the arcana of Tani's body. He is amazed at the way the little one uses the mana. The aristocrat thinks that this guy is just a genius. However, the question does not leave him: does the boy still have something in store? The duke folded his arms across his chest. He thinks about the fact that in time he will become an aura master, and it was not for nothing that he sent Tani to the past, because he saw something in this talented little one. Tani stands with her legs wide apart. He holds a war club in his hand. The boy activated his spirit and the figure of a wolf can be seen in the blue tangles of mana. The fur of the animal is raised and there is a grin on its face. A boy riding a wolf rushes at a knight. He tries to attack first and take the initiative in the battle into his own hands. The knight stands with his hammer lowered and looks at the approaching enemy. The knight is not impressed by the fact that the boy summoned the spirit of the wolf to help him. The man's face flashes a smile. The knight swings his hammer to strike and tells his opponent that he has no chance. Tani, mounted on a wolf, jumps high and flies above the arc of fire left in the air by the hammer. Tani strikes the knight in the shoulder with a war stick. He jumps away on the wolf even before the vice-captain recovers and understands what happened. The wolf and the boy riding on him look at the opponent. They understand that they did not cause him any harm and did not even leave a scratch. Tani understands that a knight is a master not only of attack, but also of defense. The boy and the wolf look up, where an opponent is flying at them with a war hammer brought up to strike. The hammer glows with fiery light. The vice-captain promises not to kill the little one. Riding on wolves, the boy swims away from the terrible and devastating blow of the knight. The hammer hit the floor of the hall, causing a real explosion. The knight was pulled a little by his weapon and that is why he is standing bent over. Tani, riding a wolf, stares intently at the enemy. The guy analyzed the situation and realized that his advantage is the speed of the attack. The wolf and its rider glare fiercely at the opponent. The knight stands with his head held high. He looks at the traces of lightning caused by the too fast movements of the wolf with the boy on his back. The vice-captain begins to understand the boy's intention. The knight slams his hammer with all his might on the floor of the hall where the duel is taking place. There are cracks on the floor in different directions. The hall is filled with the energy of the hammer. The blow of the hammer destroys the columns that surrounded the hall and served as the basis for the movement of the wolf. The wolf flies away from the broken column. In the eyes, one can read a lack of understanding of the situation. A whirlwind of energy flies in front of Tainy's nose, created by the knight's use of his mana and warhammer. A wolf with a rider lands on the floor. The boy looks at the knight. He is amazed that a knight wields such a massive weapon with one hand. Tainy deduces that the other hand usually has a shield. The knight with an angry face rushes to catch up with the boy. He is enraged by the fact that the enemy is constantly running away and the vice-captain cannot reach him with a weapon. He notes that the boy runs away well. A knight with a hammer in his hand chases his opponent throughout the hall. Tainy riding a wolf avoids a direct collision with an opponent. Both wrestlers clench their teeth and try to outwit each other. The enraged knight leapt at the boy using a spirit weapon that formed a fiery aura around the war hammer. The boy looks at the enemy, who is rapidly approaching. Tainy activates her mana and flies towards the opponent. His battle staff glows with a blue glow. Whirlwinds of energy rage in the hall and between rivals. The warhammer burns with fire. The Duke looks at the huge ball of fire from the explosion. A clump of blue mana can be seen from the cloud of fire and smoke. The boy's body flies out of the cloud of fire and smoke that formed after the explosion. The boy's clothes are burnt. The head is thrown back. He is unconscious. The knight and Duke rush to Tainy's body. The Duke crouches over the boy's body. The boy is lying on the floor, covered in wounds, bruises and burns. The Duke shouts at the knight. Tainy raises her head and points a finger at the knight. He says that he has defeated the enemy. Surprised, the Duke turns and looks at his loyal knight. The knight did not expect such words from a boy who barely survived such a blow and was in such a state. The vice-captain's eyes are wide open. There is a scratch on the knight's cheek from which blood flows. Tainy tries to get up on her own. He rests on his elbow. The Duke shouts at the boy, accusing him of insanity and excessive stubbornness. Says because you shouldn't take risks in sparring. The boy looks at the Duke's angry face and answers that if he hadn't behaved like that, he wouldn't have achieved anything in this life. The Duke and the knight stand over the boy. He sits with his hands on the floor. The Duke tells Taina that he will fulfill his promise and give him everything the boy needs most right now. Tainy passes out. The knight spreads his hands in fear and does not know what to do. The Duke stands calmly with his arms folded across his chest. The guy wakes up in bed. The Duke is standing next to him. He says that he waited a longer period for the boy to recover and retire from sparring. The aristocrat turns around and orders the boy to follow him. Herzog says that it is necessary to seriously discuss some matters. The Duke and the boy walk side by side. The aristocrat holds his hands behind his back. Tainy asks how much sleep he got and believes that a high mourning priest was called for him to heal. On the way they met Chloe. She looked angrily at her father and boyfriend. The girl put her hands on her sides and asked her father where he was taking the boy. The lady herself assigned the boy a rest. Herzog points a finger at the boy and says that he himself is guilty of getting such a blow during the fight. The boy was angry with the old man. But he said that he would not do anything bad to the savior of his daughter. Chloe turned her gaze and attention to Tainy. She yelled at him for getting out of bed too early. Moreover, after he visited the grave with one foot. The boy smiled broadly and apologized to the young lady for violating her order and making her nervous. Chloe smiled and ran a hand through Tainy's hair. She told the boy not to be so grown up and to worry less. The aristocrat became saddened, turned around and walked away from the boy and his father. The Duke ordered his daughter to prepare for the sacrament of coming of age, which made her very sad. The Duke's face became serious and worried. The Duke is sitting at a desk covered with books and folders of papers. Tani stands before a serious Duke, who warned and asked the boy not to tell anyone else that he was from the future. The goddess, the mistress of all things, holds an ancient clock in her hands. Herzog says that even a great goddess has no power over changes in space and time. The aristocrat is sitting at the table. He looks like he's embarrassed by what he's saying. He said that it was for this reason that his family hid the relic that could control time. The boy stands amazed. His eyes are wide open. The Duke told him that the goddess was not the creator of the world, and that information had been expunged from the holy books, and it was known only to the most ancient families of the kingdom. Tani stood opposite the aristocrat and promised with a smile that he would not reveal the secret to anyone, so as not to violate the foundations of the existence of the entire worldview of people. Tani frowned and held out his hand with a grave look, and demanded that the Duke would have a conscience and give him the thing he had promised after the duel. An angry Duke of Valencia looks sternly at Tani and says that what he wanted to share with the boy was the ancestral secret of the Valencia family. The aristocrat asks the boy if he has heard of gravity. Satisfied with himself, with a smile on his face, the Duke says that the Valencia family has 4 techniques. These are mana control techniques, defensive and offensive sword techniques. Tani listens to the Duke with delight. His eyes are burning with curiosity and enthusiasm. Out of excitement, the boy clenches his fingers into fists. The aristocrat winks at the boy and says that if the boy prefers striking weapons, then he will not need swordsmanship techniques. Tani swings as if striking with a hammer or mace and tells the Duke that the frail sword is no match for the hammer. The Duke looks at the boy's praise. The Duke looks at the boy, who is still bragging, and tells him that he will now teach the technique of acquiring inner skills. The aristocrat's face is smiling and determined. Figures in cloaks and hoods sit at a large table in a dark room. Faces are hidden in the shadows, hands are folded on the table. One of the figures informs that Irina is dead. The same person reports that Irina was a valuable resource that could not be simply lost. She was also the blade that pierced Alfheim's heart. People at the table excitedly and loudly, as one, exclaim that one Hyen is the expected heir of the Morse family. The hooded people present look at the leader sitting at the head of the table and promise to carry out the leader's order to gather information about the heir of the Morse family as soon as possible and as best as possible. The Duke points a finger at Tani and says he knows better than most what skill the boy needs to practice the most. Tani does not understand what the aristocrat means. The Duke holds the bridge of his nose, his shoulders slumped in despair. He tries to explain to Tani what gravity is, and why when a body is bigger, it has more energy. The aristocrat clenches his fingers into a fist. He is angry that Tani does not want to understand the information that the Duke has prepared for him. The old man begins to resent the boy's behavior. The Duke takes the boy by the scruff of the neck and with his outstretched hand puts him outside the balcony. He tells the little one that he will now learn what gravity is by personal example. Tani is plummeting. His face shows fear. He shouts that the old Duke has gone completely mad. The cobblestone is approaching at high speed. The boy lands right on top of his spirit wolf. Their bodies lie spread out on the cobblestones. The Duke looks triumphantly at them from above. He smiles and asks if the boy now understands what gravity is. The guy is sprawled out on the cobblestones and smiling. He replies that he felt gravity with every centimeter of his body. The Duke informs the boy that he would not kill himself from such a height. Tani woke up. He is sitting on the bed. Chloe is sitting next to him and says that the boy has already reached the level of an expert. The boy looks with eyes wide open in surprise and tries to understand how quickly he became an expert. Chloe angrily folds her arms over her chest and asks why he's training so hard. She says that practicing with her father is honorable, but driving yourself away is not a way out of the situation. Lady is sitting on a chair around the bed where Tainy is. They are talking about a coming-of-age ceremony. The boy reports that the aristocrat's behavior shows that she is nervous. Chloe laughs. A snow-white smile is on the girl's face. The aristocrat says that if her father is training Tainy, then they have become almost relatives, and from this moment the boy can call her sister. The boy coughed from the unexpected turn of events. The lady says that there is nothing funny and that it is a great honor, because she is the daughter of a duke. Tainy apologizes. Chloe smiles at Tainy and tells him that since they are related, this conversation should be kept a secret. And she also tells that Sir Drexler is looking for Tainy. Men in uniforms are sitting on the benches. They watch something attentively and with a serious look. Drexler stands in the middle of the arena. The knight stands in full armor. He is armed with a war hammer. In the other hand he holds a shield. Sir looks at the boy with a serious look. Opposite the knight stands Tainy. He carelessly holds a war club in his hands. The hand is fixed on the side. He asks why he was called. Sir Drexler drops his weapon on the floor. He watches with eagerness. A smile plays on his face. He asks the boy about revenge for their previous battle. The knight squints and apologizes to the boy for the previous sparring. He says that he behaved unworthily and lost control of himself, which is unbecoming of a knight. The knight activates mana abilities and begins to glow with a golden glow. It is slightly tilted and covered by a shield. Sir Drexler tells Tainy to attack. The boy activates his abilities and flies high into the air to attack the knight. He looks at the boy, who flies at him with his hand extended to strike. Tainy attacks the knight with a stick. He falls into the shield with which the enemy was covering himself. Sir Drexler looks at the boy in surprise. While the knight is standing covered by the shield, the boy pushes away from the shield with force and swims away from the enemy. In his hands is a battle club. The guy landed on the ground and is fiercely rushing at the enemy. He swings his stick and runs to the knight. The knight stands, covered with a shield, and waits for an attack. Tainy prepares to strike the enemy. The mana is concentrated at the end of the battle staff. The boy's face is smiling and expresses readiness and confidence in his actions and their results. The knight uses his fist to strike, on which he concentrates all his energy. The patchwork glove on his hand begins to glow with fire. He understands that even a light touch can cause serious injury. The enemy is enveloped in the glow of mana. Their weapons meet and clash. The faces of the opponents are eager and you can see the excitement of the battle and the battle shawl in which they fell. Knocks back both opponents from the impact. They fly away from each other, throwing their arms. Tainy attacks the enemy again. He stands firmly on his feet and holds a shield in front of him. Drexler looks out of his defense and is very surprised by the boy's strength and speed. The men sitting and watching the battle are surprised by how easily and quickly the boy uses a weapon that must be very heavy for him. Sir Drexler takes up his weapon. His warhammer begins to glow. The knight stands covered with a shield and prepares to seriously enter the fray and teach the boy. Tainy evaluates the enemy's actions. He understands that he must be careful, because with each attack and blow he becomes stronger and more skilled in the use of weapons and the art of combat. The knight stands surprised in the arena. He watches the boy, who falls high in the air like a kite on a victim, on Sir Drexler with a stick in his hands, with which he prepares to strike a powerful blow. Tiny, his weapons covered in the glow of mana. Energy surges around the boy and pulses through his war staff, the top of which shoots lightning bolts. Shocked spectators see how the center of the arena simply explodes. The columns that surrounded the place of the fight are falling. A cloud of dust and soot obscures the duel from the eyes of the people. In the middle of the arena, the floor of which resembles a crater from a meteorite, sits the knight Sir Drexler. His shield lies nearby. Facing the knight, leaning over, is Tiny. He grips the stick in his hands. The knight rises and says that it is inappropriate to spar more. The boy passed the test and is ready to join the ranks of the Order of the Blue Wing. People on the benches around the arena rejoice. The boy looks surprised and confused. He informs that he is not going to join the order, and the Duke knows about this decision and should have informed the knights. It is hard for the knight to believe what he just heard. He is surprised, because the boy has already learned one of the secret techniques of the Valencia family and is not going to join the order. Tiny remembers the conversation with the Duke. The aristocrat told the boy that he who plans to travel the world should not join anyone and choose someone's side. The Duke turns to the boy and points his index finger at him. He says that he will prepare a magical artifact for the boy, a weapon. This weapon will be the war hammer. The guy is standing with his hands folded on his chest. He says that making a hammer will take a long time. Duke in and Pav, and yes, there is that weapons already Kil Km and Science and how they do it. Tiny is standing in Randall's forge. Master Dwarf Rendell himself stands in front of him. He has a strong build and is dressed only in a blacksmith's apron. Dwarf of strong build and with a beard. The dwarf shouts at the embarrassed boy. In the hands of a blacksmith. Hammer. Master Rendell reports that he would rather refuse the order than prepare the hammer for the little boy. The dwarf folded his strong arms, which are covered with gnarled muscles, on his chest and skeptically looks and listens to the boy, who assures that any knight would be better able to handle such a weapon. The dwarf turns away from the boy and says that he will agree to such a job. The face of the master does not show any enthusiasm for what he will have to do. Tiny and the dwarf bent over the table. There is a war hammer on the table. The hammer itself is covered with runic symbols. The guy asks if the weapon is ready. The armorer says that she should be fitted for a boy. The boy strokes the hammer with his finger with delight in his eyes. The top of the hammer glints in the torchlight. The master says that it is necessary to complete certain functions of the hammer. The master sullenly tells the boy that he has another hammer altogether. It is made of black pressed iron. There is a special rune on the hammer that makes the weapon heavier. The boy's eyes light up. He grabs the dwarf by the hand and asks the master to show the weapon and tell about the features of the weapon. The master and the boy look at the handle of the hammer, which glows with a blue glow. The boy is delighted with what he saw. The dwarf offers the boy to hold the hammer and says that the weapon weighs about 100 kilograms. Tiny picks up the hammer and starts swinging it. The dwarf cannot believe what he sees. Tiny hits the floor with a hammer. The impact throws the boy and the dwarf into the air. There is a large pit at the point of impact. The master warns the boy not to destroy the whole building. The guy leans the hammer close to him. He likes him very much. Tiny is pleased. The dwarf looks at the boy as if he were crazy. The weapon reminds Tiny of his nocturne from a past life. A boy and a dwarf are standing in the middle of the hall. Tiny holds a hammer in her outstretched hands. He asks the blacksmith to make the handle longer so that when the boy grows up, he can use it. The boy still holds the weapon and tells the foreman that he can demand double payment for the work from the Duke. Taney stands in the office in front of the Duke and tells him about the meeting with the master. He also reports that it takes 2 weeks to remake the weapon for the guy. The Duke talks about his daughter's coming-of-age ceremony and the wedding with the Crown Prince, which should take place immediately after the ceremony. Taney speaks of the quick death of the royal family. A lion in a crown, the royal coat of arms, crossed out by a bloody line, as if a wound during the second disaster on the continent, the entire royal family and their heirs will perish. 2 groups of knights face each other. They are armed with different weapons and differ in the color of the fabrics that cover the armor of the opposing sides. The death of the royal family will destroy the kingdom. The princess is sitting on the throne. Her face is hidden in the shadows. The back of the throne is dented and chipped. The stairs to the throne and the throne room are covered in blood. There are swords sticking out of the floor of the hall. The boy and the Duke argue. The aristocrat says that he will be able to save his daughter from an attempt on the royal family. Taney objects and says that the second prince will also die. The Duke, with a thoughtful look, says that no one is aware of the special abilities that his daughter possesses. Her character and skills are much bigger than people think. A princess is standing on a city street. A red-haired girl is standing next to her. A crowd gathered in the street. Knights separate him from the princess. A woman and a child bowed before the princess. The faces of the princesses are covered with hair. On her head is a golden crown, decorated with precious stones. The smile on the princess's face does not indicate that she is happy. Lore is excited. He says that he wants the best for his daughter and the world. And that's why he has to save the royal family and his daughter. Taney resolutely raises a fisted hand and says that he will not interfere with the Duke, but if something goes wrong, then the boy will save Chloe himself. Couples are walking along the path in the park. Men and women are elegantly dressed. All these people have come to take part in the solemn coming-of-age ceremony of the Duke's daughter. 2 men are walking along a path. They smile conspiratorially at each other. One of them says that everything should go as well as possible, because they put their hearts into preparing for it. The Duke sits half-turned at the table. A white-haired man is standing behind him by the window. He looks out the window and says that there were many more people than planned for the ceremony. The new moon in blue informs the Duke that among the guests there are representatives of the Rochter family. The aristocrat is not satisfied with the information he heard. 2 knights crossed swords in a duel. One can see a coat of arms with a flying blue bird on the shoulder. Another has a red rose on the coat of arms. These knights symbolize the rival families of Valentia and Rochter. New Moon and the Duke are looking out the window. The Duke is worried and tells the servant to remind the guests of the Rochters, in whose possessions they are. The servant replies that they have already taken care of it. The Duke is sitting in a chair at the table. He thanks the servant Zenas for preparing and organizing the ceremony. He replies that he is happy to do it, because Chloe is like a niece to him. Taney stands with her war stick in the yard. A drop of sweat runs down the boy's face. The boy was training. He muses that the Duke is afraid of unforeseen events during the ceremony. The Duke's daughter and her red-haired bodyguard are heading towards the boy. Chloe smiles. Vivian's face is worried. She is embarrassed. Taney looks at the approaching girls and asks if it's time for them to go to the ceremony, because the guests have already gathered. And the absence of the young lady may be interpreted by the ambassadors as an insult. Chloe replies with a smile that they were there, but it's very hot inside. The red-haired security guard says that she tried to convince the young lady, but it is in vain. The aristocrat looks coquettishly and slyly at the boy. She goes on to say that Tani is fun to talk to and can see the wolf. The guard stands silently behind the young lady. Tani summons a spirit and it appears in the air from a vortex of mana that the boy released from his finger. Chloe clenched her fists in satisfaction and raised them up. She asks if she can hold the puppy. Chloe is holding a wolf in her arms. Vivian and Tani are standing next to each other. A voice is heard from behind praising the angel of the Valencia family. All three turn and look in the direction the words came from. A man in a brown jacket and white pants got down on one knee and put his hand to his chest in greeting. The stranger says that Chloe is the most beautiful woman he has ever met. Vivian and Chloe look at the man in confusion. The man confirms their guess that he is Tybran, Fawn, Roller, a member of the clan who, with the best of intentions, is at odds with the family Valencia. The man gets to his feet and offers the lady to chat, because maybe they will become friends for life. Another man approaches the group. He is dressed in armor. The guard angrily raises her left hand and covers her mistress with it. She tells her husband that his proposal is unacceptable and that the young lady must go to the guests. Chloe looks worried. With a disgusted expression on his face, the young aristocrat is surprised because he sees a woman, a knight. He says that he will not tolerate it when the guard girl objects to him and that this is unacceptable. A bodyguard of a young aristocrat approaches the red-haired bodyguard. This is a burly man who towers over the girl, the bodyguard. A sword hangs at his side. The name of the male bodyguard is Graham. He goes up to Chloe and with a silly look holds out his right hand and says that his master is quite sincere when he expresses his admiration for the Duke's daughter and has long sought an opportunity to meet her. The lady looks at the men in fright. The wolf sitting in her arms looks evilly at the new arrivals. He scowled at them. The guard apologizes for his behavior and asks for his master's forgiveness. Tani watches as a red-haired security guard appears between Chloe and the men. She stands up for her lady and does not allow strangers to approach her again. The man in armor is surprised and stunned. The boy approaches Chloe and calls her sister. His appearance is unexpected. The girl looks at the boy in confusion. The aristocrat is interested in the question of who this little boy is. He is surprised by the color of the child's hair. The son of a noble family proudly orders his bodyguard to remove the boy. At this moment, the boy's hand flies up to the aristocrat's face and slaps him. Panic lands face down on the ground. The mark on his cheek is red from Tani's punch. Everyone present is stunned at this scene. The aristocrat's bodyguard does not have time to react. Clenching his teeth with malice, the young man's bodyguard screams and reaches for the hilt of the sword. Tani sends the guard after the owner with a strong slap. That scoundrel flies to the ground. A man's tooth is knocked out and a stream of blood flows from his mouth. Two men in festive clothes look out the window. They see Tani's massacre of pesky guests. Observers are amazed at how the boy dealt with opponents, among whom was a knight. A man with wide-open eyes and a trickle of blood from his nose wonders why everything took such a turn and came back like that. A red-haired man in a dark room is standing on one knee on a carpet. His head is bowed. A well-dressed man with gray hair is standing by the window. He folded his hands behind his back. The red-haired man opened his eyes wide in surprise. He is shocked by what the gray-faced man said. The man said that Tybran should make a scandal at Lady Chloe's ceremony. And that soon he will be fired. The gray-haired man turns away from the window. An evil smile plays on his face. He says that solving their main problem and losing one idiot at the same time is a good option. The two men watching Taney from the window say that the boy is either a genius or a monster. A dark-skinned man with white hair leaned in front of the other. He walked solemnly across the room. The men talk about the enmity between the two families. Dark-skinned notes that young Valencia gentlemen have arrived. And they sincerely love Chloe and are ready to get even with those who insult their sister. The Duke is sitting seriously at the table in the office. Taney stands in front of him and takes a cookie from a bowl on the table. The Duke looks directly at the boy and says that he heard about the commotion arranged by Tybrin. Taney looks at the bowl and puts a finger to her mouth. He takes the cookie with his other hand. Herzog says that the culprit is Tybrin, and there will be no complaints against the boy. The boy replies that he felt better. The aristocrat shouts at Taney with a burning look. He is furious that the boy does not understand the seriousness of the situation and therefore should not always wave his fists and resort to force at the first opportunity. The aristocrat points to the boy and asks if he wants to go to jail before the Demon King comes. Taney smiles nervously and replies that the men have been behaving very strangely. The boy left the Duke's chambers. He stands at the door and hears the aristocrat's angry shouts about Tybrin having the audacity to cling to Chloe. The boy scratches the back of his head. The boy is standing by the door. He looks and sees someone running towards him very quickly and shouting loudly. Two young men with white hair and the same appearance, their faces reddened with rage, are running. They brag about the fact that they will punish the bastard who dared to look at their sister somehow the wrong way. The New Moons attack Taney, who did not expect such a turn of events. One of them waves his hand at the boy. Another tries to kick. One of the men flies away and falls unconscious. The other calls out to his friend and is surprised by what he sees. A man stands next to Taney. He looks surprised and frightened. A drop of sweat runs down his face. Taney is calm and confident. Taney is standing. One young man stands next to the boy and looks at him. Another waved his hand and ran up to them. The New Moons recognized Taney and said that they had heard about him and about the battle with Sir Drexler. One of the men puts his hand on the boy's shoulder and tells him that he is incredible. They say how sorry they are that they met at such a time and that they now have an urgent matter. Young men and women look with dignity. These are members of the royal family, who consider themselves the most noble family on the continent. Therefore, only those with whom there is a blood connection are admitted. Taney clenched her teeth tightly. He is angry with the aristocrats and says out loud with anger that all problems arise because of them. Two men are walking down the hall. One of them is dark-skinned and has a sword by his side. His companion walks away and smiles. He looks carefree and keeps his hands in his pockets. The guy looks down and grimly at the two men who are addressing him. The boy guesses that these are aristocrats. A doubt creeps into him. The boy realizes that the smiling face of the aristocrat is adjusted with the help of mana and is fake. Taney sees it glowing with the glow of mana. The man puts his hand on his chest as a sign of greeting. He introduces himself as Baron Rendell, von Narshev. The aristocrat arrived to participate in the coming-of-age ceremony of the Duke's daughter. The boy stands in front of the men. The Baron says that he wanted to meet Taney even after he defeated the knight with one blow. The aristocrat asks if the little one is related to the Valencia family. The boy says with dignity and without fear that he is now a baron in the Duke's lands, and one should not neglect politeness towards the master of the manor and his daughter, who is to undergo the ceremony. Taney folded his hands on his chest and looks displeased at the intrusive guest. He offers the guy to become friends and treat him to dinner, as well as talk and have fun. The boy's eyes are wide open. He is surprised and confused by the Baron's words that the boy is close to the young lady. The aristocrat asks to introduce him to the Duke's daughter. Tainy swings hard and hits the aristocrat on the cheek with her palm. The Baron is thrown far from the blow. He jumps and, hanging his head to one side, flies to the ground. Tainy and the man who accompanied the Baron watch as the aristocrat, knocked back by a blow of the hand, falls to the floor with a noise and raises a cloud of smoke and earth. A boy dodges a sword that a dark-skinned stranger swings at him. Tainy did not expect the blow. He managed to avoid the blow. The opponent has his eyes wide open from malice and holds the sword tightly with both hands. The man's teeth are tightly clenched in anger. Eyes burning with anger. The sword is firmly held with both hands and brought forward to strike. A stranger strikes. Tainy activates the mana and covers herself from the attack with her hand, placing it under the blade of the sword. The boy tensely holds the punch and makes an effort for it. Tainy is on her knees. His aura glows with a blue glow. He restrains his opponent's sword with his hand. The air around the enemies burns with a fiery aura. The guy notes that the man rules the mana, the territory. The boy looks fearfully at the hand holding the sword. He understands that the opponent is serious and he has the level of a contender in the level of power. Tainy doubts her divine armor. The boy's opponent is attacked by a wolf spirit. The man and the ghost look at each other with anger. The dark-skinned man found it hard to believe that the boy was using a spirit in battle. Tainy flies towards the enemy. The boy's fist glows with energy. The man squats down and watches as the boy's fist approaches. He holds a sword in his hand. The boy's fist crashes into the opponent's forehead. He just looks at the boy's hand next to his face. Tainy is surprised that the opponent did not move an inch. A hand holds the boy's clothes on his chest. The boy did not expect this. He looks startled and surprised. The man straightens his hand and throws the boy away with a strong jerk. He flies high into the air and flies a skull. The opponent follows him with his gaze. The man finds himself near Tainy and brings his sword in for a powerful strike. His face is distorted with anger and hatred for the enemy. The air pulsed with the energy released by the man. Tainy crossed his arms in front of him and tries to protect himself from the blow. The spirit of the wolf came to help the owner. He covered the boy from the enemy's blow with his body. Tainy and the wolf are thrown into the air by the impact. The wolf falls to the ground with its eyes closed. The boy looks scared at his ward. A man with a flaming sword lowered stairs after them. Tainy lands on the ground. He falls on his back and flies over the ground, raising dust. Tainy looks in horror at the flaming sword of the enemy, with which the man wants to kill the boy. He swung his sword high to finish off the Baron's offender. An aristocrat stops a man with a sword. The Baron holds his hand to his broken cheek. Sweat rolls down his face. He straightens his hand and asks not to touch the boy, because the Baron himself gave the reason for the fight. Tainy and a white-haired man in a blue suit are sitting at a table. There is a cup on the table. The white-haired man says that he wanted to meet the boy for a long time, but he did not think that it would happen under such conditions. Tainy sits across from the white-haired man and apologizes for his behavior. He says that the boy exaggerated his suspicions about the guest with whom he had a quarrel. A man with white hair is about to drink from a cup and holds it to his mouth. He says that the Baron forgave the boy for his inappropriate behavior, so he will not get to the investigation of the circumstances. The man smiles mysteriously. Shadows fall on his face. The facial expression takes on a menacing look. He says that Valentino is not a place for fun, and if a person hides his face under a mask of magic, then he has permission to do so. Tainy looks confused. He is conceived. The boy is frightened by the aura and energy emanating from the white-haired man. A hand puts a cup on the table. The white-haired man says he has to go because he has a lot to do. The man gets up from the couch but stops halfway. His face is interested and surprised. The boy asked to answer one question. That question was, who is Randall? The white-haired man smiles. He raises his hand and says that this is classified information. But he is connected with the royal family and they have no right to talk about it. The day of the ceremony. A fair-haired girl in a dress is sitting by the fountain. A man in a light suit is sitting next to her. Men walking around look at the couple around the fountain. The decorated hall is filled with people. They talk, laugh and look at each other. Cerzina stands in the middle of the hall. Hands folded behind the back. He looks at people and controls the situation. Cerzina is standing next to the white-haired man. The boy quickly eats a chicken leg. He is festively dressed and holds chicken legs in both hands. The boy is completely focused on them. A man stands next to Tainy and tells him to eat slowly, because there is enough food for everyone. The boy holds a bowl and a spoon in his hands. He tipped the bowl and sipped from it. Tainy is holding a bitten leg in her hands. He looks confusedly at the surprised and bewildered Cerzina. He stands with a confused look. He holds his hands behind his back. Tainy looks at Cerzina suspiciously. The boy is still holding chicken legs in his hands. The white-haired man put his hand to his heart as a sign of greeting or respect. The Baron approaches the table where Tainy is sitting. The man says that the boy is so old that he needs to eat more to grow faster. Aristocrat says that Zenas is a busy man. Tainy, dressed in a white shirt and a bow tie, stands near a table on which empty bowls with pigtails are visible. He is embarrassed and apologizes for his behavior last time. The Baron stands next to the boy. He smiles. Tainy bows his head and respectfully says that he is grateful to the Baron for his generosity and that he forgave the boy. The aristocrat said that it was not worth asking. The nobleman waves his hand in delight. He tells the boy to hit him again if he asks for something like that. And he reminds the boy and himself that no one has beaten and spanked him like that for a long time. The attention of the present men and Tainy was drawn by a servant who came to the center of the hall, extended his right hand in a gesture, and solemnly asked everyone to applaud the Duke's daughter. The Duke and his daughter, dressed in white, walk along the red carpet through the hall. Father supports Chloe by the arm. Two boys are walking behind them. These are the Duke's sons. They folded their hands behind their backs and slouched. Chloe is standing in a hall bathed in golden light. The girl smiles. She is wearing a white dress. The Duke's daughter raises her hand, dressed in a white glove, and greets all the guests present with a wave. The Baron turned away from the boy and looks in amazement. He tells the boy with delight and enthusiasm that Lady Valentine is a very beautiful and stately girl. The men and women present opened their eyes wide in surprise and left their mouths open. They say that Lady Valentine is a real angel. The guests watched the Duke's daughter in amazement. The aristocrat herself is upset. The girl's shoulders are down, her eyes are sad. The head is bent low. Hands are folded down in front of you. The girl goes to the throne-like chair. She picks up the hem of the dress and takes a step towards the chair. Shoes can be seen from under the dress. The head is bent low. Lady thinks that after this day everything will change. Taney stands out from the crowd. He alone looks and sees that the girl is upset. She bowed her head low. The boy's eyes show pity and sympathy. He worries about the girl. A wolf spirit in the form of a puppy appears above the heads of all the guests present. It is enveloped in the blue glow of manna. The guests, men and women, raise their heads and look in surprise at the wolf flying over the hall. The spirit of the wolf flies up to Chloe. He smiles and looks at the girl with kindness in his eyes. She smiles widely with a beautiful smile and looks at the puppy flying around her. The wolf stuck out his tongue and licks the girl's face. She says that she is tickled. The Duke and his two sons look on in surprise. The aristocrat notes that it is a tiny wolf. The young men do not understand if this is planned. The girl sits on the throne. She smiles widely with a snow-white smile and laughs. The wolf lies in her arms. The young lady strokes the puppy and asks Moon Wolf to lie still. The puppy begins to glow with a blue glow in the girl's arms. It increases before the eyes. The wool becomes bristly. The girl spreads her hands in confusion and looks at the wolf. The wolf stands behind the throne. He took on his greatest form. A young aristocrat is sitting in a chair. She looks majestic and looks at the wolf who is next to her. The animal looks with a firm gaze. Next to the lady on the throne lies a huge wolf. He is sleeping. A young aristocrat caresses his snow-white fur with her hand. People are watching this scene. The two men watching the lady and the wolf exclaim in surprise and delight that they see an angel and a divine creature together in one place. They are amazed by what they see. Among the crowd of men stands the Baron and Taney. The aristocrat put his hands on his sides. He is very happy and asks Taney if this is the true form of the spirit, emphasizing that it is very elegant. The Baron smiles and thanks the boy for the opportunity to see the spirit of the wolf and such an unexpected performance. Chloe sits on a throne in the middle of the hall. Those present watch carefully. In front of the young lady are her father and two brothers. The father thanks the fact that his daughter grew up and became a wonderful person. The Duke says with a sad face that he is very sorry that Chloe's mother did not live to this moment. Tears welled up in the girl's eyes. She tells her father that it would be just wonderful. She is very sorry for her father. The guests present are surprised by the conversation between the Duke and his daughter. The two men whisper to Tanya behind her back about the Duke's family history. The boy looks at them. The lady rose from the throne. She stands in front of her father with her head slightly bowed. He puts a red ribbon with a medallion around her neck. The servant stands in the middle of the hall and says that it is time for the main event of the ceremony. Chloe's father informs that it is time to meet the young lady's husband and introduce him. The Duke stands on the steps. He returns to the hall. A stream of golden manna bursts out of his hand. The energy forms a ball in the middle of the hall. Those present look at the figure of a young blonde man emerging from the sphere. Guests are amazed by the projection. Junk looks at the audience in the projection and introduces himself as Bread, Li, Fawn, Aslan. From the projection, the young man looks at those present in the hall from above. He reports that he is very happy to have the angel of the Valencia family as his life partner. People look up at the projection of the aristocrat. Surprised, Vivian looks at the projection of the young man with his mouth wide open. She says that she cannot believe it, because the young aristocrat is a complete copy of the old king, his father. Taney looks confused at the Baron standing next to him. The aristocrat says that it is time for his speech and smiles. Taney grabs the Baron's hand and asks where he has gone. The aristocrat looks at the boy in surprise and chuckles. The boy thinks that it is inappropriate to speak now. The Baron informs the boy that therefore there is nothing to worry about and be careful. He pats the little one on the head. He is surprised. The aristocrat tells the boy to mentally read Nals backwards. The word Aslan is heard. A young white-haired youth stares mysteriously and hums hand around face. His face glows with a bright golden light. This is Prince Aslan. Crone, the prince walks down the hall. He turns and smiles at Tani. He holds one hand behind his back. He waves the other to the boy and says that they will see each other again. Zenas approaches the boy and asks what the boy was thinking. The boy answers that the weather is very hot today. Zenas assures the little one that he was not worried about it. The prince approaches the lady who is still seated on the throne and takes her hand. The duke stands by the steps with his head bowed in reverence. Ser Zenas leans over Tani and gives her an index finger. The boy is carefully watching his finger. Sir with a smile says that the duke asked to convey to the boy that the preparation is over. Night. The duke is sitting at the table in his office. The boy stands in front of the aristocrat. He carefully looks at the boy, and thanks that with the help of the spirit of the wolf, the young man calmed the lady. The duke's eyes are serious and glittering. He says that it is still hard to believe in the disappearance of Karun's divine artifact Humanitas and the attack of Kraken monsters on the city, the capital of Ordos. Tani is carefully reading some letter. He replies that the circumstances of the disappearance still need to be clarified. On the table lies a medallion with the symbol of the duke's family. The boy asks how his hammer is doing. The duke folds his arms over his chest. He is pleased with himself and smiles. The aristocrat told the boy that the war hammer was already fully ready, so that the young man would go to the master to pick up the weapon. The gunsmith and the boy are looking at the unusual shaped hammer standing under the wall. The dwarf points to the hammer with a muscular hand and informs that he has finished everything that was needed and perfected the weapon. The boy takes the handle of the hammer with his hand. The dwarf took his chin with his hand thoughtfully. He thinks about the fact that it is still a strange little one and the master is interested in what this little one is made of. The child holds the hammer above his head with both hands and looks at the master. The dwarf folded his arms across his chest. He offers the boy to test the weapon and swing it. Tani stands in a fighting stance. He holds a hammer in his hands. The guy's eyes are focused and expressing admiration. He says that owning such a weapon is a real pleasure. A boy sits on a wolf's back. The child holds a hammer in his hands, through which the energy of mana flows. The boy is delighted. He says that it is worth going in and thanking the master, the blacksmith, for such a creation. A big white wolf with a boy on his back runs through the night forest. The animal swims up high. Tani notes that she's full today and asks the spirit if that's why it's scurrying around like a rabbit. They run quickly through the forest. The hand rearranges the figure on the map, on which the sea and land are marked. There are two more figurines on the same card. A man in a hood is standing with his hand palm to his heart. He reports that the boy has left the Duke's lands and is racing somewhere on a spirit beast. A group of people in the same hoods are sitting at a table in a dark, dimly lit room. There is a map on the table in front of them. They are talking about a guy who is heading to the city of Karen and he is doing it very fast. The man at the head of the table sits calmly. He folded his hands on the table. There is a map in front of him. Others present are confused. They open their mouths wide and think that the boy is moving in the direction of Exena. The man is holding a golden figure in his hands. He carried it over the map. Eyes from under the hood glow red. He says that the guy and his actions are crazy, and you should get rid of him as soon as possible. Taney is riding a wolf and holding a hammer. A group of strange-looking people blocked the boy's path. A figure in a dark hood stands behind the people and holds a drawn bow lowered to the ground. A group of men armed with various weapons is standing in front of the rider on the wolf. Behind them is a hooded man with a bow. Taney's enemies glow with a dark purple aura. All of them are expert level. A huge pumped-up bald man, with well-defined and developed muscles, holds a fighting club in his hands and says that little boys should be beaten in order to learn. The archer's eyes glow. Taney stands on the ground. In one hand he holds a war hammer. A group of men run towards the boy. They are ready for battle. The archer raised his bow behind him and takes aim. Attackers glow with a dark aura. The archer releases the bow. He and the weapon are enveloped in a dark aura. The arrow takes off from the bowstring and, bending unusually, flies. An evil smile plays on the warrior's face. The attackers are represented as black knights. Taney looks down and with an impassioned motion of his hand unhurriedly deflects the arrow that flew straight into his heart. The attackers look on in surprise with wide eyes. They are surprised that the boy just deflected the arrow. They wonder if he really has the level of an expert. After a short period of numbness, the men rush into the attack again. They shout that this cannot be and it was just an illusion. Men are angry. With a shout and a raised weapon, they attack. Taney swings her war hammer at enemies. The hammer glows with the power of mana. The guy looks at his opponents with a firm gaze. The boy hits one of the attackers with a hammer. He releases the weapon from his hands and the skull flies. The war hammer glows with a bright blue glow. The other attackers look on in horror. They think that this level of mana mastery is more than expert. The men are impressed by the little guy's skills. The man, knocked back by Taney's hammer, falls to the ground and kicks up a cloud of dust and dirt. Blood flies from the Black Knight's mouth. At the place of the fall there is a real crater. Taney watches calmly. His gaze is confident and focused. The guy is wearing a raincoat. He holds a war hammer on his shoulder. The boy tells his enemies that they are parasites and minions of demons. The men run away in fright along the night forest path. They did not describe the enemy that way. Taney riding a wolf chases the attackers. The archer runs ahead of everyone and orders them to run in different directions. The men run away. The boy holds a hammer with one hand. He jumps out of the wolf and shouts to the fugitives that he did not allow anyone to escape from the battlefield. They run away along the rocky path. The boy stands on bent legs and holds a hammer with both hands. Mana energy rages around the weapon and the boy. The boy's gaze is resolutely focused. He raises his weapon high above his head. With force, Taney hits the ground with a hammer. He raises a whole wave of mana energy. The force of the blow throws the boy into the air. The cloak flutters, the eyes shine with a blue glow. The blow of the hammer collapses the ground under the feet of the fugitives. They scream loudly and try to run away or stay on their feet. A wave of energy spreads across the ground and rages in the air. The ground is collapsing under the attackers. People spoke out in fright. They let go of their weapons and everything mixed with the earth, rocks, weapons, and people. The fugitives are frightened and scream loudly. Taney stands on a piece of land left in the middle of a huge crater. He holds a hammer on his shoulder. The attackers are trying to get out of the collapsed ground. People are crushed by blocks. Taney is looking at the war molo. The weapon shines in the darkness of the night. The boy's look is enthusiastic and satisfied. The boy believes that with such a weapon he will crush everyone and everything. A boy riding a wolf rides through a recent battlefield and looks around. The bodies of the opponents are clamped by pieces of earth. Someone's hand is visible. Taney regretted not leaving anyone alive to question. The boy and the wolf turn their heads at the loud sound at the same time. They see a huge thick tree falling on them. A question arises in the boy's mind: what could it be? A broken tree falls to the ground. It raises a cloud of dust and soot. The wolf and its rider fall sideways from the impact and fly away on the ground. Taney watches as a giant two-headed figure appears among the trees of the night forest. In his hands, the giant holds a stick of colossal size. The monster's eyes glow with red light. It is cutting down the forest. Frightened boy looks up. He notes with horror that the new enemy approaching from the night forest is a two-headed troll. A drop of sweat runs down the boy's face. The two-headed monster has green skin. One of the heads roars and screams with rage. The other head is calm and focused on the enemy. The monster quickly approaches the victim. The boy and the wolf he sits on look at the monster towering above them. The dimensions of the troll are truly gigantic. The green monster stands with its legs wide apart and swings an axe. A huge monster is standing on a rock. It has the body of a horse, the torso of a man, whose head is crowned with wide horns. Under the rock stand a woman with a staff and a warrior with a sword, which he holds firmly in both hands. Taney stares wide-eyed. He realizes that a monster of a higher level than the one Taney possesses has appeared for him. The troll was a level 5 monster. Taney riding a wolf escapes from the blow of a huge axe. The axe itself ends up near the rider and his wolf. They look at the weapon in fright and run headlong. The monster leaned down. It holds an axe with both hands. A man in a hood is standing near the monster. He holds a staff in his hands. A red aura rages around the man and the troll. The man commands the monster. A man in a hood tightly grips a magic staff in his hands. A dark roar rages around. He orders the monster to be beaten until there is no trace left of the boy. The mage's eyes glow red. The boy jumps off the wolf and sits on the ground. He prepares the hammer hanging on his shoulders for battle. Taney realizes that it's the monster tamer who controls the troll. The wolf grins. The boy points with his hand and orders the wolf to grab the monster tamer. The wolf attacks. His mouth is wide open and he rushes to attack. The magician clutches a staff in his hands. A red magical energy rages around. The tamer's gaze burns with madness and the realization of power. He tells the boy that it won't work. A man in a hood tightly grips a staff. The red mana begins to pulse even more powerfully. A monster is standing behind the man. It folded its arms over its chest. The monster holds a battle axe in his hands. The troll holds a battle axe with both hands. He swings hard. It is covered with dark red threads of dark magical energy. The troll attacks Taney with a powerful blow. He runs away from the blow, holding a war hammer in his hands. The axe felled huge trees. Taney is sitting on the ground. He looks at a huge area of forest where the trees have been chopped down by a troll's axe. The trees lie down. A cloud of sand, dust surrounds. Taney sits on the ground, her eyes wide open in surprise. The war hammer lies in front of him. A troll suddenly appears above the boy. The boy jumps up and runs. The tip of the troll's axe lands on the spot where he was just now. The monster is angry. It looks at the victim with red evil eyes. The boy slides on the ground, dodging the axe. A spike flies over his head. Tani understands that the two-headed monster's rage has its limits, and soon the monster must calm down. It is worth waiting a little. A boy runs away from a monster. He runs away and looks around. The troll crouched down and let out a cloud of poisonous yellow smoke with a roar. A cloud of poison haunts Tani. Tani falls to the ground. He looks in horror at the sharp point of the axe approaching his unprotected head. There is fear in the boy's eyes. The axe blade is fast approaching. The boy picks up a war hammer from the ground. He knows that he will not be able to dodge the blow of the axe. The boy swings the hammer, which shines with the light of mana. Tani swings hard and hits the troll. A trace of a war hammer swing is visible in the air. The troll brings the axe in to strike. The monster stands on one leg. One head is thrown. The troll is lying on the ground. He watches as a boy approaches him with a hammer that glows with a blue light raised to attack. The monster's legs are spread apart. The hammer is aimed at the opponent's stomach. The monster roars in pain. The boy's shot hit the target. A huge wound rips through the troll's stomach. The troll quickly regenerates and attacks again. He cuts down a thick tree, trying to get the boy. Tani swims to another tree, dodging the attack. Tani activates an ability and attacks the monster's knee. A large hole is gaping at the place of the patella. Mana energy rages around the hammer. A hooded wizard looks at the forest where the battle is taking place. The troll towers above the trees. You can see how the dark energy used by the tamer to control the monster shines. The dark mage clenched his teeth and wondered how much longer the boy would last and how long he could dodge and run away from the troll. Tani is sitting by a rock. His war hammer is down. The guy sits on one knee. He is trapped. The shadow of a monster is visible on the ground. The troll swings an axe. Around the axe and the monster's body, dark energy pulses and threads. The monster's eyes glow with red light. The face is fierce. A frightened wizard stands behind a tree. He grips the staff tightly. His eyes are frightened. He sees that the troll's rage is passing and he is getting out of control. At the same time, damage regeneration stops. Tani is standing under a rock. He clenches his fists tightly. In one hand he holds a hammer. The guy tiredly, but triumphantly looks at his partner. The thought reigns in his head that he managed to wear out a monster. A startled wizard stands under a tree and looks at Tani. The magician understood the idea of the little one. The tamer gripped his staff tightly. The tamer is attacked by a wolf. He knocks the dark mage to the ground and bites into his shoulder. The mage shouts. Tani activates and attacks the troll. The blue magical energy of mana rages. The boy tells the wolf to keep his grip on the monster tamer. Tani mana energy rages at the point of impact. A down-defeated opponent is not visible. The boy is standing on the ground in the middle of a storm of energy. A boy is standing on the ground in front of a monster tamer. Tani holds severed troll heads in her hands. The dark mage sweats from fear. The guy says it's time to talk. The dark mage is crouching in front of the boy. A hammer hangs behind the boy. The boy asks about the headquarters of the Demon Followers organization. The magician says that the headquarters in the City of Lawlessness, and the head is the mayor. The guy holds his chin with his hand. He does not believe in the words of the defeated mage. Tani remembers how the wolf tore off the head of the bandit he defeated so that he could not say anything. The boy is standing in front of the dark mage. The boy holds his index finger up. He questions the magician about the theft of the divine talisman Karuna. He denies it. A frightened tamer looks at the boy. Tani says she will release the mage if he tells the name of the person responsible for this operation. Otherwise, Tani will smash the mage's head with a hammer. A boy walks along the morning street of a rich city. There are still people walking down the street. No one pays attention to an unfamiliar boy with a hammer behind his back. Tani is standing in front of a big house. This is a pub in the city of Inaxon. The Duke promised the boy that the right people would meet him here and take care to settle the boy down. Tani looks dumbfounded at the man who came out to him. The man has blonde hair and a light-colored beard. The boy recognizes the future emperor of the sword in the man. A moment later, a young man with red hair appears in front of the boy. He removes the image of the sword emperor with a wave of his hand. Smiling, he says that alcohol is not sold to children here. The boy looks at the man in surprise. He feels no mana or aura from this man. And confused by the fact that the man turned the trick with his face. After activating Tani's mana, the man smiles and bows to the boy. The stranger says that he did not recognize the boy as a customer who made a special order. A man leads a boy through a tavern where people sit and rest. The man gestures to the boy to follow him. A man and a boy are standing in a modestly furnished room. The boy puts a token in the man's outstretched hand. A rectangular token is in the man's hand. It depicts a bird in flight. This is a special order of the Valencia family, the Order of the Black Wing. The man bows to the little one and, putting his hand on his heart in a welcoming gesture, introduces himself. This man is the head of the J Black Wing Order. A man and a boy are facing each other. The man tells the little one that it's time to move on to the task. He explains that the magician who was supposed to give guidance to Tani disappeared at sea. And now you have to find him. The man shows the boy a plan B in case the wizard is not found. He shows the talisman. Tani is holding a mysterious locket. The boy smiles and asks the man to find out about the leader of the demon Hasla's followers. A small boy in a cloak with a hammer behind his back is standing in front of the ladder leading to the ship. A man is standing on the stairs. Apparently, a sailor. He asks the child to show a token, an identification card. The boy takes out a token. Mana is activated and a sign is projected from the tokens. The sailor is surprised and asks the boy if he is an aristocrat. The boy clutches a medallion in his hands. The sailor is scared. He apologizes for his inappropriate behavior and asks where the young aristocrat's entourage is. The guy with the hammer behind his back rises. The sailor who lets the ship on board bows low, but looks after the boy. Tani stands on the deck of the ship. He is a little surprised. A dark-colored energy rises from the deck. The boy is surprised because mana can be heard from the ship. Tani stands on the deck of the ship. He looks at the people around him. He is surprised that the mana blowing from the ship is dark. Various people can be seen on the deck. These are both sailors and travelers. A man in a suit is standing next to Tani, who is looking out over the deck. He takes something out of his breast pocket. A hand with a knife approaches the head of a boy who stands with his back and does not see it. The knife glows red. Tani grabs the attacker's arm and twists it to the side. A stream of blood flies out of the hand. The attacker screams. Tani is standing in the middle of the deck, holding the man's hand. Everyone present on the deck looks at this scene and does not understand what happened. A boy holds a man's hand. The sleeve of the man's clothes and Taney's hand are covered in blood. Two stout sailors approach them and ask the boy what he is doing. Taney sends a knife into the attacker's chest with a kick. The man flies away with a knife in his chest. Blood flows from the wound. The boy and the sailors look at the corpse of the attacker. A knife handle protrudes from the thief's chest. Blood poured out of the wound and the corpse was covered in blood. Blood is also flowing from the mouth. The men look in surprise at the dark purple smoke rising from the attacker's body. The man near the railing felt sick. One of the sailors leans over the boy. He thanks the little one for saving them from the presence of the demon's follower, but now there is one matter to be settled officially. He asks Taney to come with him. The guy grabs the sailor's hand and starts twisting it and hitting him with the body of other sailors. People scatter screaming in all directions. The deck near the boy is covered in the blood of enemies. Bodies lie at his feet. People run away in panic and shout that the boy is a murderer. The mutilated bodies around the boy are enveloped in a dark purple aura and smoke. The boy confidently stands among the demon's defeated and exposed followers. A man with long gray hair approaches the boy. He bows to the boy and apologizes for the inconvenience. The boy smiles sarcastically and pokes his fingers in the direction of the ship's captain. The boy says that the captain is a great actor. The man looks scared. Taney activates the war hammer and strikes the ship's captain. He looks at the hammer, which is rapidly approaching. A headless body lies on the deck. From the place where the head should be, dark purple smoke rises. Taney stands in the middle of the hall on the red carpet. Opposite him sits a gray-haired man on a throne. A knight with a halberd is standing near the throne. A servant in a suit is still standing near them. The king looks sullenly and shakes his head as he listens to the report on the activities of the demon's followers. He says that he has become very relaxed and has lost his vigilance about the demon worshippers in his kingdom. The king's advisor asks to examine the arriving boy for danger. The king learns that the dark aura was detected by the Taney spirit. At the king's request, Taney summons a wolf spirit. The wolf appears and sits behind the boy. The king says it's just great. The king sits on the throne. With a wave of his hand, he asks and sends the guard with the halberd and the servant to leave the hall and leave the king and the boy alone. The men are surprised by the nobleman's order. The king with the face of a kind old man assures the boy that there is nothing to be afraid of. The noblewoman asks Taney about the real reason for coming to the kingdom. The king is surprised to listen to the boy, who says that the main reason he came to the kingdom is to hunt down and identify all the followers of the demonic cult. Taney talks about what should prevent the theft of the artifact from Karan. The king sits on the throne and says that the neutral status of the kingdom makes it difficult to trust outsiders. Taney kneels before the king. The nobleman holds a magical artifact in his hands. He appoints Taney as a knight, guardian of the artifact, because the boy has proven his loyalty and honesty. The king turns and leaves. The ceremony is over. Taney stops the monarch and says that he has something to tell the king. The king turns to the boy. The boy says that a person named Hassel is behind all the troubles that happened in the kingdom. A man with a staff is kneeling in front of a large blue sphere. The top of the staff, a silver ball, glows with a bright blue glow. Tentacles and bubbles of air are visible in the sphere. A man is standing in front of the sphere. A monster resembling a huge octopus can be seen in the sphere. It looks at the man with big white eyes. The man puts his hands on his sides and looks at the monster. Taney stands on the training ground surrounded by targets, barrels and training tools. A knight is standing next to the boy. Opposite these two stand 6 more knights. The knights look at the boy in surprise. They whisper that this is the boy who killed the demon followers in Flaxen. The knight announces that this phenomenal kid named King is joining the Magic Artifact Protection Squad and has the right to command the squad. The men were stunned by what they heard. The knight with an angry expression on his face stretches out his hand to Tainy and says that he should know for what merits the little one was appointed to the order. Only the seniority system is important here. Tainy summons a wolf. He appears in his greatest form and roars at the knight. The knight's eyes are frightened. He spreads his hands in confusion. Tainy with a wolf spirit stands before the knights. The guy looks at his rival in conversation. The wolf looks at one of the assembled knights. The knights stand in front of the boy, they salute him with their hands. He stands businesslike and looks at the new wards. Tainy stands half-turned. A gray-haired, short-cut man approaches him. He asks the boy if he is the legendary boy who defeated the demon followers. Tainy descends the stairs after the security squad commander down the stairs. They walk down a dimly lit corridor. This is the central part of the castle. The boy and the commander go to look at the artifact. The boy and the commander enter the hall where the artifact is located. This is a huge tetrahedral stone of bright blue color. It hangs in the air between 4 columns. The commander says that only a worthy person can touch the artifact. Tainy reaches out and tries to touch the artifact. Tainy touches the artifact. He understands that the divine artifact has the energy of the 7th level and is able to repel all living things. The boy is enveloped by a magical glow that has transferred to him from the artifact. The squad commander looks at the boy with wide-open eyes in fright. The commander of the Divine Artifact Protection Unit walks with the boy across the parade ground. The man says that for many years he served in the security unit and headed it, but he saw this for the first time. A knight with long red hair shoves the dazed squad commander away with his shoulder. He turns to the boy and asks him if he is the holy half-elf. The knight rushes at the boy with a drawn sword. He shouts that he does not believe that the boy is an elf. And now in battle he will show the true face of a liar. The boy dodges the enemy's sword. The knight is surprised by Tainy's speed and reaction. Tainy grabs the knight's arm and throws him over. The man did not expect such a turn of events. He is confused. The squad leader watches Tainy beat the man. The boy was standing over the outstretched body of the knight, who was lying in the dust on the ground. Tainy is standing in the middle of the training ground. The boy rests his hands on his sides and looks at the bewildered squad commander. A man with short hair is watching them from the window. A group of knights is standing on the square. Standing in front of Tainy is one of the Divine Artifacts Guard squad with a drawn sword. The point of the sword is aimed at the boy. The knight does not believe that the boy defeated Greg. The knight challenges the boy and attacks. However, the boy jumps out of his seat and punches the man on the cheek in the air. The knight flies away with a red cheek from the blow. Knights, in armor and with swords in hand, challenge the boy one by one. They are burning with zeal to teach the little one. Tainy knocks the spirit out of the man with a punch from below. The opponent's head is thrown back. Blood flows from the open mouth. The boy hits the attacking knight on the head. Streams of blood fly from the knight's nose. Tainy stands over one of the opponents. He looks at the man sitting at his feet and leaning on the exercise machine. Another knight approaches them. The knight glows blue and has a powerful mana charge and mana field. Tainy realizes that this is no ordinary knight, but a person who has the status of a contender. The unknown knight raises his right hand in a gesture of greeting. He smiles widely and introduces himself as the captain of the Royal Order of Knights Liam, Fawn, Peterson. Tainy bows her head to the knight. He puts his hand on his heart is a sign of respect and apologizes for his unworthy behavior in front of an aristocrat. The knight pulls out a sword from his sheath and asks if the boy would mind entering into a friendly duel to test each other's strength. The boy looks at the man in confusion. A knight in full armor stands in front of a boy. In his hands, the man holds a sword, the point of which burns with a blue glow and is aimed at the boy. The aristocrat promises that during the duel he will tell Taina something about Hasla. Opponents stand against each other. They are ready for a duel. Taini thinks that the man is a very interesting opponent, and besides, he has the necessary information. Both rivals prepared their weapons. The knight takes a theatrical pose and tells the boy that he should be determined, because he is unlikely to cope with such an opponent. The knight smiles. Taini activates mana. A blue aura surrounds him and the war hammer the boy holds with one hand on his shoulder. The little one thinks that it is impossible to refuse such a match. With a sudden movement imperceptible to the human eye, the boy soars high into the air. He holds a war hammer in his hands. The knight is still standing in the square. He drew his sword towards the opponent. The knight defends himself with his sword from the blow of the hammer. Taini is determined. He says that the knight underestimates him. Taini crouches to the ground and swings her leg to cut the knight and knock him off his feet. He strikes the knight captain's plate sabotants. The boy's leg hits the knight's plate boots. However, the attack has no effect. The knight's leg did not move an inch. Taini realizes that the knight has activated the stone attribute for protection. The knight slowly turns to the boy. He quickly swims back. The boy is impressed by the opponent. The knight throws the sword on his back. He activates the mana and a fiery light begins to shine around him in the weapon. A circle of fire appears at the knight's feet. The knight says he takes his words about Taini back. The sword describes an arc in the air and the blade descends on the boy. Taini defends with a hammer. Both rivals stare intently at each other. A series of lightning and heartbreaking attacks by the guy follows. The knight repels them. Traces are visible in the air where the weapon flew. The man says that the boy should not be called a genius, because he is a monster. The knight smiles and looks at the enemy. He raises his sword in defense and says it's time to finish. A man drags one leg above the ground. A man with a sword lowers his foot to the surface and an energy release occurs. The boy with the hammer in his hand is pushed away from the knight. Taini flies in a hurry. A white-haired knight walks across the parade ground and smiles. He holds his sword down, horizontal to the ground. The captain of the order offers the boy to finish the battle. Because it will be too much to continue the fight. Taini leans on the hammer and looks gratefully at the knight. The child looks battered and tortured. Ing can barely stay on his feet. The body is covered in bruises. The knight talks to Taini and holsters the weapon. The man tells the boy that there is a certain person named Litmen. He receives secret orders from the king himself and travels a lot. And that's why he can know Hasla. A gasping knight runs up to recent opponents. He apologizes and turns to the boy. The messenger says that His Royal Majesty wishes to see Taini immediately. Taini is standing in the royal hall. The king sits on the throne. A man is standing next to the nobleman. The king says he has found the person Taini was looking for. This person is Litmen, a guide along the eastern coasts. The man turns to Taini. He says he heard a lot about the boy who defeated the demon followers. And has extraordinary strength. The guide is wondering how he can help Taina. The boy is embarrassed to answer the driver. He makes up his mind that he wants to visit the East Coast, because some of his relatives might be there. The man smiles and says that it can be so. Taini looks at the handler, and sees that he has his own mana, the body of some animal. He recalls the words of his assistant that Haslam could be a beast man or an orc. That they will hide or disguise themselves. The king turns to the man and says that he will help the boy with his quest and fight against the demon's followers. The guide is surprised and not very happy about the king's order. Taini stands before the king in the hall. It's night outside. The boy asks why the king did not show this man before. The nobleman asks to check him for connection with the cult of demon followers. The king tells the dazed boy that the curse of the royal family was the ability to see the future. And when the boy appeared in Karun to prevent a tragedy, the king believed the boy. Taini rides through the city on a wolf. He ponders who Lit Men was and why the wolf did not feel the negative energy from this person. It's night in the yard. A large ship is standing at the pier. A group of people carry boxes onto a moored ship by the light of a single torch. A figure in a cloak with a hood is heading towards them along the shore. The men who carried the boxes pay attention to the stranger and abandon their work. They draw their swords and look at the stranger. He slowly grabs the hood with his hands and throws it off. Men bow before Hassel. They ask why he came to them so early, since he was not expected today. The man replies that this is how the circumstances turned out. Haslam turns out to be Lit Men. He drops his cloak over the crates. Two sheathed swords hang by the man's side. He tells the sailors that the king instructed him to stay with the boy and had to change plans. Behind the man with white hair, the deck of the ship explodes. The man's eyes are wide open with surprise and surprise. The ship lies on its side in the water. The explosion broke it in half. Flames erupt from the ship's hold. Against the background of the burning ship, you can see the figure of a boy sitting on the bow of a sea vessel. Taini fell from the ship and hit the ground. The sailors, who were attacked by the boy, fly away in different directions. Taini sits amidst the dust and vibrations of the mana. He holds a hammer on his shoulder with one hand. He looks attentively and asks if the sailors want to surrender for good. Hassel raises his hand and urges the frightened and confused sailors not to give in to fear and panic. The boy is not that strong, he is just showing off his strength and has already spent a lot of it. Taini sits on the ground and holds a hammer behind her back. A man with white hair rushes to attack the boy. He brandishes his sword and promises the little one to end him once and for all. Rivals met. Taini deflects a sword strike with a warhammer. The man did not expect this. He brings the sword far back for another strike. The man takes out his second sword from its scabbard and attacks the boys with an unexpected lunge. The little one covered himself from the blow with the handle of his hammer and took a blow at him. Taini held a sword with a hand that was burning with mana aura. The sword vibrates with energy. The boy swings his hammer wide and yells at the spirit wolf to attack. The man holds a sword in his raised hand. However, he cannot defend himself with it. The wolf attacks the unprotected side of the man. Blood flies in the air. The white-haired man's face is angry. Taini stands with hammer in hand and watches as his opponent turns and runs, swords armed, to attack the wolf spirit. A smile plays on the man's face. High in the air, the man crossed his swords for a powerful strike. The wolf glares at the attacker, who approaches him with a weapon drawn. A dark energy rages around the man. A dark energy rages around the wolf spirit. Blood flies from the injured side of the animal. The wolf looks fiercely and opens its mouth at the enemy. A group of men with swords run towards Tani. They are going to attack the boy. They raise a cloud of dust from under their feet. Tani describes an arc in the air with the war hammer, and the attackers fly in all directions. The air is filled with human bodies, weapons, and the blood of wounded sailors. Opponent is standing on the seashore. He holds swords in both hands. Behind the man, the water rises like the tentacles of an octopus. The man's posture and smile are self-confident. The swords the man is holding glow with dark energy. Streams of mana and water surge around him, filling the entire space around the man. Tani, riding the wolf, watches in surprise as the opponent lowers his sword and a wave of energy bursts out of the water and cuts through the air, heading towards the boy. The boy and the wolf turn and run towards the enemy. The man raises his sword and covers himself with a shield of water. Tani and the wolf stand in the water. A huge sphere of water hangs in the air in front of them. It spins and draws in even more streams of water. Tani's opponent is standing in the water. A wolf and a young man attack him. The man defends himself with his swords from the war hammer, which hits precisely at the crossed swords. The blast of energy that was released from the impact of the magic weapon throws the opponents in different directions. A man flies backwards into the sea. The boy and the wolf fly away to land. Tani, riding a wolf, looks at the sea. A huge post rises from the water, which is wrapped in water and foam. Streams of water rage and bubble around. Killer whale looks out of the water. The monster's eyes glow red from behind the streams of water falling from the monster. The monster swims rapidly into the open sea and runs away from the boy. Behind him is a trail of water and foam. The boy looks after the fleeing monster. He also sees crates that have fallen from the ship's hull and are floating in the water. The guy thinks about what plan his opponent has. A naked man enters a cave filled with blue light. He treads carefully on the floor. A wizard is sitting in a cave, holding a staff tightly with his hand. He does not have a very neat appearance, and the man's gaze is full of anger. A man addresses him and praises the sorcerer. The sorcerer sits under a rock wall. He bowed his head low. A half-dressed man is sitting in front of him. A bag of food is standing next to him. He offers the sorceress to eat, otherwise he will lose consciousness. A man and a sorcerer stand in front of a huge sphere, in which sits a monster of gigantic proportions. It looks like an octopus. The sorcerer's hands burn with a blue glow. It's like he's holding back a monster. A man kicks a bag with food. Bread scatters on the floor. The sorcerer is ordered not to let the monster either escape or die. Otherwise, the monster's mother will find out and destroy the city. The king is sitting on the throne. In front of him are Tani and a knight. They report to the nobles about the raid on the sunken ship. The sailors turned out to be followers of the demon. The king raises his hand and asks those present how to resolve the situation and find the werewolf man who turned into an orca with the help of magic and the demon's followers. The boy climbs the stairs into the house. He is wearing a cloak with a hood over it. Truckers are carrying boxes of property from a truck that is standing on the street near the porch. A red-haired man opens the door for the boy. Tani raises her hand in greeting. Behind the boy you can see porters with boxes. A guy with a red-haired man are sitting at a table. They talk about a man who turned into an orca. The boy notes that the werewolf did not possess dark energy and would be difficult to track. Tani and her husband look at the mountain of boxes in the middle of the hall. The boy asks the redhead if he can find a tracker in the Black Wing Order who can find werewolves or demon followers. The man folded his hands in front of him. His gaze is lowered. He tells the boy that it is impossible to do what he is asking. Tainy grabs her head with her hands, afraid that everything was in vain. A man and a boy face each other. Enthusiasm can be read in their eyes. The man clenches his hand into a fist and raises it. They are fully willing to follow followers. Two people are walking along a dark night street. They are wearing raincoats. The face is not visible from under the hoods. They walk carefully and look closely at the buildings on the street. Strangers talk about whether their venture is safe. One of them answers that he personally checked the owner of the store. Two strangers enter a cozy room. The room is full of all kinds of goods. There are amphoras, telescopes, and microscopes. In the midst of everything, a human skull can be seen near some herbs. A man in a monocle stands behind the counter. He carefully reads the list of goods that they need to buy from a sheet of paper. The man says that he will now find everything he needs that is in stock. The man behind the counter smiles politely and asks the mysterious customers to wait a little. Strangers look intently at the man. Each of them thinks that maybe it was unnecessary to start the case. A figure appears on the threshold. She casts a long shadow on the blue carpeted floor. The man's face, which is covered with dark veins, shows through the hood. A dark energy rages around the stranger. The whole face is covered with dark veins, like a spider's web. The man behind the counter turns away from the guests. People in hoods look at each other. The seller has the idea that they know each other and are companions. A new stranger comes down the stairs. Dark energy rages around him. The companions look in horror at the man approaching them. The man says that he can no longer tolerate their failures. The newly arrived man raises his hand and a dark energy engulfs one of the hooded men. He screams in pain. A man in a cloak and a hood walks down the hall. The charred corpse of a man lies on the floor. The stranger orders the other man to clean everything here. A man in a cloak who has just used dark magic approaches the seller's table. He looks at the merchant and apologizes. The red-haired man looks at the guest in surprise. The stranger raises his right hand. He says that everything is going too smoothly in the store. The merchant's body is enveloped in a dark purple ball of energy. The seller screams loudly in pain. The red-haired man is sitting, leaning against the table. His shirt is torn. Tainy is sitting next to the man. He turns to the redhead and holds his hands by his shoulders. The man recognizes the boy. A red-haired man is lying on the floor. Lightnings of dark energy play on his body. The hand above the body is wrapped in a clot of dark mana. The magician says that he is impressed by the goods in the store. The seller rises. He is on his knees. The sorcerer threw a wallet with gold coins on the counter and asks the merchant to serve him as politely and well as possible. The redhead sits next to Tainy on the floor. They say that you can't just let this matter go. Both turn their attention to a pile of ashes lying on the floor near the counter. The boy crouches next to a pile of ashes. He takes the ashes in his hand and looks determinedly. The boy has the idea to turn to the royal professional magicians, pathfinders. The boy turned to the redhead. Tainy says that you have to figure everything out yourself. The man says that he felt the energy and the level of possession of mana is not lower than the 7th level. Tainy sits on the steps leading down to the square where knights in armor and swords train. A boy reads reports. It says that cultists were spotted on the neighboring islands. A gray-haired knight from the order protecting the divine artifact approaches the boy. He says that many knights have been sent on leave. The man offers to have dinner together. Tani stands under the column. He watches as a group of knights enter the hall where the divine artifact is kept. They say that the time has come for them to prove themselves in the matter of protecting the relic. Tani emerges from behind the columns and addresses the dazed knights. He says that they act very predictably. The knights stand and look in surprise. Behind the young knights stands the captain. One of the young men says that the boy doesn't know anything about the captain, and therefore he has no right to judge this person. The captain looks down. Pity and sadness are visible in his green eyes. The man says that he understood the limits of his power, and therefore decided to create an order for the protection of the relic and go into service. The captain is standing against the background of the relic, which glows with a bright blue light. In front of the man stand two young knights with drawn swords. They protect their captain and are determined to fight. The captain orders the knights to attack. He points at the boy with his hand. Young knights rush at the boy. They hold their weapons firmly and high above their heads and run towards the boy. Tani strikes with his hammer, and the knights fly in different directions, dropping their weapons. Some of them are wounded. Streams of blood burst from someone's mouth. The captain of the Divine Artifact Protection Order looks at the carnage in surprise. He can't believe that his knights are lying all over the hall, scattered by one small boy's blow. The gray-haired man crouched over one of his former knight students. Thoughts are swirling in the captain's head that he cannot leave everything so easily. The man removes a bag with something round from his belt, on which hangs the sword. Sweat runs down the captain's face. The thing in the bag is the old man's last hope. The man swings and throws a red ball at the boy. A boy stands with his weapon lowered and looks at an object flying in his direction. Tani swings the war hammer to deflect the object thrown at him by the captain. The boy did not have time to see what object the old man threw at him. The bullet ricochets off. The boy and the captain are looking at an object that has fallen to the floor. The captain looks frightened at the ball that fell in the middle of the hall. Tani, hammer down, stands at a distance and cannot fully see the object. The orb breaks and dark energy escapes from it, which is accompanied by an explosion. The captain and the boy cover their hands from the energy and light.
If you have watched up to this point, then I am very grateful to you, because this is where the video ends. If it's not difficult for you, then like this video and subscribe to my channel. And if you want to continue this story, then write in the comments. Thank you all, I love you all.